Welcome to the Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, March 28th. My name is Chris Lynch, and I call this meeting to order. I'd like to thank those in the public and those on TV for taking an interest in our district business. I'd like to start tonight by introducing those at the table with me tonight. To my right is Superintendent Steve Murley, and then Directors Lori Rotland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kersling, Latasha Deloche, Paul Rosler, Chris Liebing, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. I'd like to thank our students at Horn, Gardner, Lemmy, and Lincoln for the artwork around us tonight. And I also want to quickly recognize our own director, Latasha Deloche, for being recognized as a woman of influence by the Corridor Business Journal. So congratulations, Latasha. The public is reminded if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form from the top table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comments, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting in the community comment section of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda tonight is community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District, and if you're willingness to share your comments, you're reminded to give your name, address, and the topic you wish to speak. During community comments, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. Initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. To the extent you are commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of speakers, but is prohibited by Iowa open meeting law from responding to questions from speakers or engaging in substantive discussion regarding non-agenda items. And first up tonight is Natalie Cruden. And on deck will be Melissa Kirschman.
I am Natalie Cruden, 234 South Lowell Street, Iowa City. I will speak tonight about a few of the costs of using seclusion and restraints. Some of this may be new information to you. Thank you for your hard work and especially for your attention to the special education issues. I was pleased to read in the Press Citizen that the ICCSD uses multisensory de-escalation rooms at the Theodore Roosevelt Education Center. It's wonderful that best practices are in place and doing a good job at 2 schools in our district. Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports is in use at Chinook, which has an outstanding reputation in the autism community, and a multi-sensory de-escalation room is being used at TREC. This is wonderful for the students at these schools. It's also great because it means that you and the Time Out Committee can actually visit these schools and find out what happens when there is no use of restraints and seclusion, and you could have access to data about these schools to compare with the schools where seclusion is used. I was surprised to hear that seclusion is not in use at TREC, considering that this is a place reserved for kids with behaviors that are too intense for the mainstream schools. The conclusion I draw is that seclusion and restraints are not necessary for students with the most severe behaviors, and therefore also unnecessary for students with less severe behaviors. One reason for the higher cost of seclusion and restraints has to do with the deaths of and injuries to students due to this practice. I'll quote from a paper, Physical Restraint in School, co-authored by Jay Ryan and R. Peterson, professor in the Department of Special Education and Communication Disorders at the University of Nebraska. I will send this comment to you so that you have my sources. I quote, "Unfortunately, newspapers across the nation carry similar stories. The exact number of deaths caused by physical restraint remains in dispute. The Hartford Courant, a Connecticut newspaper, reported that 142 restraint-related deaths, 33% of which were caused by asphyxia, occurred in the United States over a 10-year period. The U.S. Government Accounting Office, GAO, stated in the 1998 that an accurate estimate was impossible because only 15 states had established reporting procedures for such incidents. Based on the information available, the GAO estimated that there were 24 restraint-related deaths in the U.S. among children and adults in 1998. More recently, the Child Welfare League of America estimated that between 8 and 10 children in the U.S. die each year due to restraint, while numerous others suffer injuries. There is no precise way to measure the number or extent of the injuries to children and also to staff as a result of the use of restraint." End quote. When there is a death or serious injury, the parents sue the school. Sometimes they sue the district, sometimes just the school board. The Kentucky case was settled in June of 2016. The family was awarded $1.75 million for injuries their son sustained at school. Both his femurs were broken in multiple places. In 2016 alone, there were lawsuits filed against schools regarding the use of restraints and seclusion in Alaska, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia. Sadly, teachers and staff also get injured. They take workman's comp. I'm not sure how much that costs, but it adds up. Also, having staff out of school and using subs adds stress for teachers and students, and it adds in costs if you are training subs in the proper use of restraints. The time spent restraining students is time lost in teaching them academics. There is an emotional cost to teachers and staff, too. This is not what young people envision when they dream of becoming a teacher. I can't imagine how hard it must be for them. This isn't good for morale, and that costs money. More sick days taken, higher turnover, and early retirements. I assume that every time an injury or lawsuit happens, the insurance rates go up too. In Colorado, 2016, one teacher sued her school district for not properly training her to deal with students with behavioral issues. Today, there are 22 U.S. states that either ban the use of seclusion and restraints completely or limit it to emergency situations in which there is an imminent threat of physical harm. Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, and New Mexico may soon join them. I sincerely hope we do not have to wait for a tragedy in order to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
Just to check that I make sure I got your numbers down right. You said there were 142 deaths in a 10-year period. Is that correct?
142 restraint-related deaths, 33% of which were caused by asphyxia, occurred in a 10-year period.
Right.
That would have been ending in, I think, 1998.
Okay. And then that was from, the 142 was from 15 states that were actually keeping statistics? Or that's nationally?
That would have been national, but the 15 states were listed in the GAO office, which did a different. This paper put together a number of different sources, and so that was from a 1999 accounting at the U.S. office. So I don't know if they were the same or different, or some the same and some different.
Fantastic. Could you provide us with a copy of that
Yes.
as well?
Yes,
Thank you
I
very
will.
much.
Yes.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.
Melissa? And on deck will be Lula Palmer. Yes, yes.
My name is Melissa Krishnan, and I live at 773 Sherwood Drive in Iowa City. And I am here representing concerns that I have about the Shimmick Playground, as well as my son Isaiah Fick, who is a third grader currently at Shimmick. The playground process basically has been concerning, and there's been a lot of questions between designs and information that hasn't been quite provided to Shimmick families, me being one of them. One of my main concerns is that the RFP that the Shimmick Playground or the district has been trying to implement is that with ADA accessibility to playgrounds. And that RFP is stating that they would like to have ramps to any raised platform on these structures. The original design that was presented to the playground meetings and PTOs was at the current location of the wooden structure, which was quite a nice design. However, bids and itemized pricing and things like that were not presented. And then following that, more designs were then presented, and we were told that the location had to change to the back of the school, which is fine. However, the structure itself with different platforms and the ADA accessibility and inclusion piece started to deteriorate. The last design, one of the designs I saw, a ramp was removed to one of the platforms that held a slide to replace it with a rope bridge. A rope bridge then is not really inclusive or accessible to anyone unless you are full mobility. There's one structure that is being proposed for the older kids, I believe structure 3, that does not have a ramp to its raised platform at all either. They are proposing a spider structure, climbing gym for the older kids, which I think is a wonderful piece, but again, it is not accessible or inclusive. We were also then notified that in the beginning, for the whole process, it was always thought that additional pieces purchased by the PTO could not be attached to the core structure. So the design then was built around trying to put a lot of money into that core structure because we couldn't add PTO funds pieces to it later. Then at the very last meeting, the PTO was informed by facilities, I believe, Ben, that we could use PTO funds to attach core pieces to the core structure, therefore expanding it, making it bigger. Then that created a lot of questions and more people being confused as to what the policy is and how the requirements and ways we can facilitate this structure. It was also decided that it was possible to add a standalone slide and standalone pieces. Again, those would not be accessible. I don't believe that the district or in the insurance is going to say that a staff member can help a disabled individual climb up a set of stairs to go down and a standalone slide that has 2.5 curls to it. My son's been at Shimmick for 6 years. He's only a third grader. Most of the students will go through Shimmick in 6 years. Since he has been at Shimmick, he has always been told he cannot play, be included, or access the current structure. And so when we found out that there was going to be a new structure built, this little guy was excited. He's waiting, and he's still waiting, but yet the current designs are removing accessibility. So I just hope that new designs can be forthcoming, which we're still waiting on. I ask.
Thanks, Melissa. Lula? Up next for Julie Van Dyke. Lula Palmer?
She's coming.
It's coming.
Craig, do you want to help adjust the mic? Or just disconnect it?
I just have a very short comment. I tutor adults in the ESL program and have gotten to know some of their children and the struggles that they deal with. And I feel like the school should be a safe place for those students. And the parents should not have to be worried about them with all the other things that they have to deal with. And secondly, I don't think students should be the target of immigration officials anyway. It was not their choice or their decision to be where they are. So I just want to go on record as saying I'm in favor of a safe place for immigrants' children.
Thanks, Lula. Julie? Julie Van Dyke, and then Heather Bright will be next.
So I'm amazed that you're having the seclusion room task force report out, not during this board meeting, which many of them are probably here for, in the public, in front of the cameras. You're burying it in the meeting after this that you don't videotape and you don't show on TV. In the March 5th retreat meeting, you stated that they had met twice. We started asking for this group in October of 2016. You didn't constitute them till January of 2014. They had only met twice as of 3/5. And now they're going to report out after this meeting when everybody's gone home, late in the evening, not on TV. You hide your dirty business. You sweep it under the rug, you make it inaccessible. What Natalie Cruden has to say is terrifying to me. Several of you know that my son was thrown into the Horn seclusion room where he tried to asphyxiate himself with the bootstraps that he was tossed in there with, using a locking function key. What's the reporting procedure for this district on that? You know what the reporting procedure I experienced was that my complaint was forwarded. My complaints about what have happened in those rooms have been forwarded, and special ed were forwarded to the board directors, and I have those emails. I can't believe that they had only met twice, and then in this 3/5 board retreat meeting, which you guys used all kinds of evasive wording for rather than discuss it, because you certainly didn't have a discussion about it in any depth whatsoever. I'll cut the mic too. Cool. Thanks. You don't talk about it there. Nice. And now you bury it in the work session after this. Let's see. When are you guys going to answer our questions about special ed? Because you don't answer questions here. And I don't get answers to my questions. I know a lot of parents don't. The answer that we get is, you can do a FOIA request and it'll only cost you $700, $250, whatever. You should be answering our questions. The only time we have special ed questions answered is when you guys are running for election, and then you disappear after that. And you don't answer our questions, and you don't help us, and you don't help our kids. And all of you who vote to put things in the board meeting, afterwards, the work session, you're helping. You're hiding it too. So you're responsible too. So any of you that agree to that and don't kick and fight it, you're doing this too. What's it going to take in this district? Is a kid going to have to die? Because I don't see any big improvements in those rooms, except that they now have a door handle on the inside. They didn't have a door handle inside when my son tried to harm himself. Those rooms got to go. And what you're going to do, what I'm afraid you're going to do, is you're going to bury this report, and you're going to pat yourselves on the back and say it's all great, and maybe you'll paint the top part of the partition above the petroleum-smelling black cow padding that's on the inside of these seclusion rooms, and they aren't seclusion rooms. These are solitary confinement cells, and that's what they should be called, because that is what they are. What are you going to paint some nice festive pink color on the top or something? Because I don't expect any big moves when you're already burying it in meetings and hiding it from the public. You should really have a special meeting where you report out to the entire district and have every parent who wants to, like when you want a bond or something, come and be able to ask you every question that they want, and you actually answer them for a change.
Thanks, Julie. Heather? It's Heather Bright up, and then Heather Young's next.
I am here tonight as one of the co-chair members of the Playground Committee for Shimmick Elementary. I do not intend to represent every participant to the committee meetings, but only to assist in clarifying some information regarding the process we used to arrive at the ultimate vote on March 8, 2017 for our new playground. It was a 15-month-long process. The process began in January 2016 with the formation of the committee being me and Savannah Connolly, our principal. We held numerous meetings involving the physical plant of Dwayne and Ben, met with teachers, parents. The students gave inputs as we passed around the images of the playground so that they could say, we don't like this or we do like that. And then we met with the vendors from the equipment companies, and even the foundation at one point, because initially we were going to have to do a capital campaign before you guys established your policy. And so we were going to alone have to try to raise a lot of money. So when you came up with your policy, we were pretty grateful, quite honestly. There were numerous meetings held over those 15 months to facilitate a timeline, the cost, choosing what kind of playground equipment to have, whether we would go with one large piece, two pieces, or a bunch of small pieces, selecting the components, reselecting the components after viewing the first images, and then reselecting one more time before a final vote was to be held in February. The February meeting vote was postponed because of concerns over the final plans, so the committee returned the plans to the company with one last set of requests, and they would return in March. And on March 8th, the meeting was to determine a final vote between two structures. There was much discussion that night about the concerns brought to you this evening from a couple of people. And however, the March 8th meeting was to determine a final decision, and this had already been bumped 1 month farther than the original plan. So the group voted and chose Plan B, 16/7. The Playground Committee has been meeting regularly and with good intention for 15 months, progressing through all necessary steps to try to get the final vote needed to select a playground for our school. As for ADA compliance, I can only assume that the district chooses reputable companies that follow the guidelines that are set in place and that adhere to codes and regulations. There have been numerous meetings held to discuss components, locations, and ADA compliance regarding the future playground. There have been ample opportunities to address concerns over the past 15 months. The current playground at Shimmick, although beloved and unique, is outdated, not ADA compliant, can be unsafe when slippery or give off mean splinters, and is not a suitable structure during much of the school year due to snow or ice. We need new equipment. I can't speak to everyone's attendance to every meeting, but everyone was invited to participate and attend. And as with any process, the earlier the input is given, the more likely that input can be included in the outcome of that process. We are very fortunate to be in the position that the district can afford new equipment for us. This process has been given much consideration and due diligence. We work hard to consider all the children of Shimmick when selecting the right equipment for our schoolyard. When the vote was taken on 3-8, it was decided by the parents, and I am here to make sure that their voices are heard in this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Heather Young. On deck will be Megan Chapman.
I am so disappointed in this school board. I assume that each of you was like me, that you truly did not know about the use of seclusion boxes in this district, and that the idea of locking small children in stinky plywood boxes was as horrifying to you as it was to me. I assume that as people came forward and spoke to you at board meetings about the use of seclusion boxes, that you would respond by educating yourselves. I assume you would create a school board tour of the seclusion boxes in the district. I assumed you would talk publicly about the mountain of facts you've been given that shows seclusion has absolutely no therapeutic and no educational value. That has not happened. Instead, you created a committee to study the issue, and then you publicly stated you did not want vocal parents on your committee. Now the school board president is pressuring the school superintendent to wrap up all these pesky special education issues by April because he has an important school bond he wants to promote. Oh yes, the school bond. Who could forget that? So huge, so vital, so stunning in its record-breaking $190 million amount. Tell me again, what is in the bond for special education? Let me tell you what's in there for special education. Nothing. Not $1 of this bond money is going towards improving the lives of special education students. Children in special education deserve to be educated to their fullest abilities, free of the threat of seclusion boxes. Their parents deserve to be full partners with their children's educators, free from the threat of retaliation from district administration. It is not acceptable that special education classrooms in this district have an alarming lack of dedicated space for sensory, occupational, and physical therapy equipment. It is not acceptable that we parents only find out about problems in special education from the state and federal complaints or from newspaper stories. It is not acceptable that Stephanie Van Heusen was fired for showing a parent a seclusion box. It is not acceptable that the majority of this school board has never set foot in a special education classroom or attended an IEP meeting, let alone stood inside a seclusion box and let the door be locked behind them. It is not acceptable that not $1 of this record-setting school bond is being used to improve special education facilities. There is no brand new 5,000 square foot special education space coming for our children. There is nothing, and nothing is not good enough. You want our support? You want the public to only write and speak nice things about you? Then do something to earn it. Prove that you actually give a fart. Instead of saying you don't want vocal parents on your seclusion box committee and then stacking the deck that way so there are no parents who are educated about boxes on your committee, invite those vocal parents to educate you on the very real options to restraint and seclusion. Instead of refusing to speak about special education during your board meetings, actually have a public discussion on what you do and do not understand about special education. It is okay to not know. Special education is actually very complicated. It is not okay to purposely say to stay ignorant when we parents want to have open communication with you, but you refuse it. Let me remind you, at the end of the day, the seclusion box issue is 100% yours. The district administration can be 1,000 times horrible in regards to special education, but Iowa state law gives the responsibility of deciding the use of seclusion boxes exclusively to school board members. We voters will be watching, and your school bond will be decided by us.
Megan Chapman. On deck is Raphael.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Chapman, and I'm a teacher at Shimmick Elementary School. And I've been an employee of the Iowa City School District for 19 years. 16 of those have been at Shimmick. And I want to wish all of you good evening. My purpose for speaking in front of you this evening is on behalf of the Shimmick staff. Some and many of those are actually standing behind me now. And most importantly, on behalf of the safety of our Shimmick students. Our hope is that you will pass this light item budget for Shimmick's new playground structure this evening. Principal Savannah Conley has provided multiple opportunities for Shimmick families and staff to gather and discuss and all about our beloved and infamous structure, yet it's decaying and it's seemingly unsafe play structure on the Shimmick property currently. The Playground Committee has met numerous times over the course of this last calendar year, possibly even a little longer. I didn't have all of the dates. We have perused district-provided company catalogs and gathered input about components from not only parents, but staff members. And each of us teachers took those catalogs and ideas to our kids. That's what mattered most, was what they were interested in. We needed their input to move forward. Physical plant staff has been in attendance. Mr. Degner came and attended, as well as board members Kirschling and Hemingway. And so at the last playground meeting that we had at the beginning of March, we concluded that the proper safety and productive learning of our student community and the current unsafe structure must come down and be replaced during the summer of 2017 for the safety of our students. We want to express our complete and utter gratitude to the district and to the board for being willing to provide funds for a new playground, for which is up for vote this evening. We thank you all for your time and efforts and hope that you will keep the desire to keep our kids safe while engaging in physical play at Shimmick Elementary as you approve the playground project for our school this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Raphael Montagna. And on deck will be Mary Murphy.
Good evening, Rafael Morataya. I have 3 kids at the district. I'm here to support the creation of the immigration task force, and I hope the district can take the suggestion and whatever comes out from the task force really serious. Right now, our community are facing a big threat, as you know, and sometimes parents are afraid to go to the hospital, to the emergency room. And I don't know if you have any numbers and data, how many parents don't decide to go to the schools meeting, for example, right? And something that I think is good that Kingsley is working in the task force to the creation, but my concern is that in terms of the communication, right? Because I did have an email last week to encourage me to participate in the task force, but the email was in English. So, I speak English and write English, and, I didn't born here, but what happened with those parents who don't speak English, who don't read English? They have to wait a week, and then who got the first opportunity to join the task force? You know who, right? And then my point is that I hope that you consider to put resources and translate and get those emails out to the people who can participate and put their fears and your here in mind and be more successful to create this task force. Thank you.
Thanks, Raphael. Mary? After Mary, be Margarita.
Chris Kingsley wanted to just add something about the invitation.
We'll have time.
My name is Mary Murphy. I reside at 890 Park Place, Iowa City, Iowa. I just want to preface this by saying I fully support the rights of the special education parents and immigrants whose rights are being expressed here tonight. My topic is far more dull and less important than human rights, but to the extent that property taxes impact the affordability of housing, I think it's still important to talk about the certified budget. My first point is that the Iowa legislature may extend the penny sales tax out to 2049 in the next few years, which would give this district access to enormous amounts of money, which could then be spent directly or indirectly on the facility's master plan infrastructure or to pay down debt. What the future sales tax revenues would be spent on by future board members is speculative. However, given that these funds could be directed toward infrastructure, I'm here to voice my objection to the projected size of the debt service levy to support the bond, found on page 28 of the agenda item in this 91-page document entitled Iowa City Community School District 2017 to 2018 Certified Budget. I do appreciate, however, that the administration included the projected debt service levy in the chart at the top of page 28, because this is a different number than the amount expressed in the advertising and at the DPO meeting. My second point is that prior to your last board meeting, I noticed in the draft of the budget the administration put together that the percentage change from actual 2016 to budget 2018 for business and central administration increases at over twice the percentage, 27.83%, as the percentage rate increase for instruction at 11.24%. Since instruction is so important, this doesn't quite seem right. Board Member Rotland asked a question at the last board meeting about the increase, and I was disappointed that it was not fully and specifically answered. Thinking the question's answer might be in the 91-page document, I went through it. There's still not a specific answer. I would assume that the answer lies somewhere in the management levy. However, the administration's certified budget document raises more questions even as it answers some. By law, the management levy can only pay for 6 categories of expenses, including some tort liability and legal fees. On page 41, the cash reserve balance for the management fund is listed at almost $1 million, while unemployment is listed at $75,000. So unanswered is, why does the district need this substantial cash reserve in its management levy for surely almost $1 million is substantial? Lastly, the projected debt service levy for taxpayers to repay the bond, if voted favorably upon on page 28, is quite a bit more than in the bond advertising document on your website. I would hope and would expect that the board will explain what exactly is a board discretionary levy reduction that is referred to in your advertising, and where would that be in your certified budget 91-page document and any supporting documents? And are you going to be able to vote on it while all of you are in office? Further, it was unclear from the discussion at the district parent organization meeting exactly what the impacts would be going forward of using the cash reserve to fund some of the facilities master plan. Back in the fiscal year ending in 2008, the district took almost $5 million from the cash reserve, or the general fund, and put it in the capital projects fund, which had a negative impact going forward during the economic downturn. So I would like to see the board discuss the potential impacts of using cash reserves to offset bond debt or the debt levy. And Board Member Ressler, I want to thank you for emailing me about the last maturity date of the bonds, it being 2042 or 43. I do understand that the bonds can be paid off early. However, early payoff is not a certainty. And I would like to see the bond debt or the debt service levy going forward that would be used to repay the bond expressed truthfully and accurately going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Margarita? And then up next will be Laura.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone.
Primero que nada, muchas gracias por el tiempo y el interés sobre este tema.
First of all, thank you to everybody for your interest in this topic.
Este es un tema muy importante para la comunidad inmigrante.
This is a theme that's really important to our immigrant community.
Y si se pasan la resolución sería una gran ayuda y una preocupación menos para nosotros como padres.
If you were to pass the resolution, this would be a big help and a big relief as parents.
Así estaremos un poquito más tranquilos.
We'll be a little bit more calm.
en casa o trabajando.
working or at the house.
Y gracias porque ustedes están tomando un papel muy importante en ayudar a la comunidad.
Thank you because you're taking a big role in helping our community.
Y como yo he mencionado anteriormente, trabajar en equipo, podemos lograr muchas cosas.
As I've mentioned before, working as a team, we can achieve a lot.
Así entonces también estamos educando a nuestros alumnos, a nuestra comunidad, de que trabajando juntos podemos lograr muchas cosas.
We're also teaching our students that in our community that working together, we can overcome a lot.
Un mejor desarrollo para los estudiantes,
It's also a good development for our students
un mejor desarrollo para el futuro de la comunidad.
and for the future of the community.
Con esto yo creo que estamos apoyando muchísimo a aquellos estudiantes que quieren sobresalir y familias que queremos sobresalir.
¿Me puedes repetirlo otra vez?
Con esto estamos apoyando a los alumnos que quieren sobresalir, sacar una carrera.
With this, we're also supporting future students and being able to move ahead and get careers in the future.
Entonces, muchas gracias y le doy las gracias en nombre de todos la comunidad hispana.
So I just want to say thank you very much, and I want to say thank you on behalf of the Hispanic or Latino community.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, gracias, Maria Grita. Laura? And on deck will be Carolyn.
Hello, my name is Laura Apollonio. I go to Iowa City High School. I'm in 10th grade. I'm here for the resolution for immigrant students. I want the school board to know that many students, including myself, do not feel safe in the school district. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the story Press Citizen published called Undocumented, and an Iowa student from Mexico lives in the shadows. To sum up what the article is about, a student who openly shared her story of how she and her family came to U.S. She stated that she's an undocumented student who lives in fear every day. After the election, many students who are undocumented know the sacrifice their parents have made, and so it gives them motivation to do good in school, to show those who say we can't wrong. Many students have a vision for the future. I don't say dream because dreams are not a reality. These students want to thrive, to have a better future. Should a student live upon the shadows at school, school is where you find out what you like, what you don't, and who you are. Teachers receiving a lot of training, but what I'm really asking is, does the school have a procedure in place to protect the students who have a vision to be successful? But also, should a student go about their day worrying that at any second they could be taken out? I appreciate and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks, Laura. Carolyn? That will be Fanai. Fanai.
I think it's important for all of us at Shimmick to keep in mind that we all are on the same page in the sense that we all have the best interests of the students at heart. And whether you fall on the side of being most concerned about getting our structure to be the most ADA compliant that it can be, that doesn't mean that you don't care about safety. And if you fall on the side that feels that the safety is of imminent concern, it doesn't mean that you don't care about being ADA compliant. We all care about that for all of our students. I'm falling on the side of being concerned about the safety of the structure. I love that structure. I think it's the coolest play structure around, but it is old, and it's constantly needing to put in for repairs on that structure. So I hope that we can go forward for safety for our students. In addition to that, I hope that our final decision will ensure the most opportunities for activity for all of our students, not one group or the other, not for the able and not the disabled, or for the disabled to the exclusion, for one group or the other. I hope we keep in mind everybody in that process. And I guess I just feel badly for the people who have been engaged in this process for the last year and investing time. And time is so valuable. And then to see those people who have been involved from the beginning, the whole way through, having to go through that whole process again, it kind of hurts to see them have to do that. And then I just wanted to end by saying thank you for giving us the money to do this. It's nice that we don't have to go and do a spaghetti supper or something like that to get the money for the playground. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Carolyn. Fanai? And up next will be Marcella.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone.
Primeramente quiero agradecerles por tomarse el tiempo de poner estas resoluciones en su agenda.
First, I'd want to thank you for taking the time to put these resolutions on your agenda.
Yo voy a hablar acerca de la resolución que se va a tomar acerca de inmigración.
I want to talk about the resolution in terms of immigration.
Con los rumores que se han oído últimamente en el área de Des Moines,
With some of the rumors that have been coming out in the area of Des Moines,
de que se ha mirado alrededor de las escuelas a los oficiales de inmigración.
That there's been some rumors or speculation that there has been some immigration customs enforcement outside of the school areas in Des Moines.
Yo pienso que y se siente que hay mucho temor últimamente.
I think that there is, and there's a feeling that there's a lot of fear lately.
Y eso provoca tanto en los padres como en los niños mucho estrés.
That provokes, just like it does with parents, very much in the students or their kids, a great deal of stress.
Y siento que en lugar de estar concentrados la mayoría de los estudiantes en lo que sería en la escuela,
And I think with the concentration of some particular students within the school setting,
o su niñez, jugar o X cosa,
or if they're as kids, if they're out playing,
se van a estar concentrando y estresando más en lo que es la preocupación.
And they're going to be concentrating and thinking about and worrying about stressful things.
De que algún día pueden tal vez llevarse a sus padres.
Like one day that maybe my parents could be gone or their parents could be gone.
Si es que se llega a compartir la mayoría de la información del estatus legal de algunos estudiantes o
That
de
if
los
for
padres.
some reason information such as legal status could be revealed, from their parents.
Y el mayor temor de los hijos es que algún día que lleguen de la escuela y no encuentren a sus padres en la casa.
The biggest fear is that one day kids will get home and their parents won't be there.
Y yo pienso que eso sería le afectaría mucho más a los niños.
It would affect children the most.
Y muchas gracias por poner eso en la agenda porque sí es muy preocupante.
And thank you very much for putting this in the agenda because this is very worrisome.
Y más porque sí afectaría a toda la familia, pero afectaría más a los niños.
And it would affect everybody in the family, but it would really impact children.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Fanai. Marcella? On deck will be Dan.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Marcela.
Good evening, my name is Marcella.
Estoy aquí para apoyar las resoluciones que ustedes han creado.
I'm here to support the resolutions that you all have created.
Soy una mamá de 3 hijos.
I'm a mom of 3 children.
Y me ayuda muchísimo que ustedes estén pensando en cómo ayudar o cómo apoyar a los alumnos, a las familias.
And it helps me in knowing that you're here wanting to support our students and the families.
Tengo un hijo que va en 7º grado y él siempre llega como preocupado.
I have a son who's in 7th grade, and when he comes home worried.
Porque de pronto llega y dice, mamá, yo vi unas patrullas en tal lugar, ¿qué está pasando?
Because he comes home and he says, I've seen a set vehicle or somebody in a certain area, and he wants to know what's happening.
Y es por todo lo que está escuchando de que inmigración está llegando en lugares.
And it's because of everything he's been hearing about how immigration's coming to certain places.
Él me pregunta, ¿qué pasa si llega a mi escuela o si de pronto detiene mi autobús?
He asks me, what happens if they're going to come to my school, or if they will do something or detain me in the bus?
Yo le digo, tú ya sabes cuáles son tus derechos, sabes lo que tienes que hacer y solamente diga, me quiero quedar callado y
you know what I've told you, that you need to be quiet and that you know your rights and that you should just stay quiet.
Pero yo sé que él está preocupado.
But I know he's worried.
No tanto por él,
And not just for him,
pero por sus amigos,
and for his friends as well,
por los padres de sus amigos.
for the parents of his friends.
Y créanme que es una situación que los niños no tienen por qué estar viviendo.
And this is a situation that children should not be having to go through.
Ellos lo que quieren encontrar en sus escuelas que alguien esté apoyando y diciendo, ¿sabes qué? No te preocupes, todo va a estar bien.
They want to know that they have people in school who will support them and tell them it's okay, things are going to be okay.
Porque si ellos empiezan a preocuparse, su cabeza está más enfocada en los problemas que el estudio.
Because if they start to concentrate on these things, their head is more worried with the preoccupations and worries than what they should be focusing on, which is school.
Si ustedes aprueban estas resoluciones, créanme que van a ayudar muchísimo a las familias, a los padres.
And if you approve these resolutions, believe me when I say you're going to help the families, the parents,
a los estudiantes,
to the students,
y a la comunidad porque se va a sentir más segura.
and of the community, because we will feel safer.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Gracias, Marcela. Dan? And last up will be Maria.
My name is Dan Daly. I have always lived in Iowa City. I want to thank you for this opportunity to address the board. Some children are attending schools in our district because the place where they lived before posed risks for their families' health or lives, or their own health and lives. The specter of grown-up strangers coming into our schools to snatch up innocent children and send them back to dangerous situations and locations is repugnant to me. What comes to my mind first are scenes from Iowa's past when agents appeared to apprehend refugees, hoping to return them to their slave masters for bounty money. Now as then, Iowans are better than this. We protect the vulnerable. I urge your support for the resolutions supporting students and families impacted by immigration enforcement, and to create a task force to devise plans to do so. Thank you for giving your careful consideration to these.
Thanks, Dan. Maria? Maria Kucha?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Cachua.
Good evening, my name is Maria Cachua.
Soy madre de familia de 2 niños.
I am a mother with a family and have 2 kids.
José de 9 años y Evelyn de 8.
Jose that is 9 years old and Evelyn who's 8.
Ellos son estudiantes de la escuela de Lucas Elementary.
They're students in Lucas Elementary.
Y nosotros vivimos en el vecindario de Modern Manor.
We live in the Modern Manor area.
Y tanto yo como otras madres de familia que vivimos en ese vecindario,
myself and other mothers and families that live in that residential area,
estamos muy preocupados por la situación que se escucha en las noticias.
We're really concerned about all the situations that we're hearing on the news.
Por eso estoy aquí para pedirles que ustedes aprueben una resolución.
That's why I'm here, is to ask you that you approve a resolution
para ayudar a nuestros niños.
To help our kids.
Es imposible que ellos no se den cuenta de lo que está pasando.
It's impossible for them not to notice what's happening right now.
Ellos escuchan comentarios, ellos con otros amiguitos ven la policía y piensan que a lo mejor sus papás están en peligro.
Them, along with other friends, they might see a police car and think my parents are in trouble.
Y esto causa estrés en los niños.
It causes stress in children.
Y puede también causar una enfermedad.
And it can also cause illness.
Ellos ahorita están cargando con problemas que no tienen por qué tener. Ellos son niños.
They are having issues right now, problems that they should not having to have to face or deal with because they're kids.
Y eso también puede afectar en ellos el aprendizaje en la escuela.
And that can also affect their learning in school.
Y no solamente el aprendizaje, sino también el comportamiento.
And not just their learning, but their behavior as well.
Por eso estamos aquí para pedirles que por favor aprueben, que nos apoyen.
And that's why I'm here to ask that you please support and support us.
Y que luchen para que todos tengamos los mismos derechos.
And so we
Gracias.
can fight so we all have the same rights. Thank you.
Gracias, Maria. Manny? Sarah Manny?
Hi, my name is Manny Galvez. My son is here in this district in North Liberty. I am a journalist for the last 11 years here in Iowa, and I think that I encourage you to make this decision. If you do it, you are going to do the right decision because I hear constantly the worries about the Latino community, and it's important to let you know that it's not just here, it's all across Iowa. But the most important, I want to share my experience in my family. I have a son, Jamin. He's like 7 years old. He wants to be an engineer. But lately, the last 6-7 months, he started to ask me, what does it mean? I am Mexican or I am American? How tall is going to be the wall? And I think this is like a kid of 7 years old doesn't have to be worried about. And I think as you hear, they hear about the news, they acknowledge like something is happening. And I think that our kids, they don't have to be worried about these issues. We need to focus and to be sure that we keep this country as it is right now. And it always has been great. It's not just in this moment. And this is strong. And this is the new face of this country, of America. The face is that multicultural, multiracial, multilanguage. And we need to embrace that as something that is going to be better for this country in the future. So we are the new reality of this country, the new face. And our kids is the best thing that we can do, try to protect them, invest them, especially here in this area, because it's a lack of communication, a lack of resources for the Latino community. And doing this, I think, is the best for, just not for the Latino community. It's the best for all of us. And I think many families that are going to be be so grateful to making this decision. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks for your community comments. And moving on to the next agenda item, it's the business consent agenda.
Yes, I'd like to pull items 6, 12, and 14.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Sorry, did you want to ask something, Chris?
No, go ahead.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus the items pulled by Director Hemingway.
I always like to check, so just Phil. Oh, sorry, is there a second?
Second.
So 6 is open enrollment, 12 is Shimmick Playground, 14 is vehicle purchase. Just making sure I got it right. All right, how are the bills?
Yes, Lori and I were on for doing the bills this time. I went through and questions that I had were answered. It was a large amount since we were off for a while, but I want to thank the staff for helping with answering the questions and providing the bills for inspection.
All right, thanks, Phil and Lori. Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Moving into board work, the first item on the agenda is support our students from undocumented immigrant families. And I just wanted to let the public know that we worked this session at our last work session. And a lot of times that's where we work things out and what we want to bring back to the board meeting. Tonight we have 2 resolutions we're very, I think, eager to talk about and support. And certainly we want to reiterate our support of our students and families. And we expect that each one of our students and families can expect a very safe and productive learning environment. And we also set forth a resolution to commission a task force, and we think that every time we've commissioned a task force and a committee and get the experts and the people most closely involved, we come back with great solutions. So I'd like to quickly get to a resolution of support. Kingsley, if you don't mind. I don't know if somebody would like to make the motion.
I move that we pass the resolution to support students and families impacted by immigration enforcement.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll have to remember to also include the task force unless you want to amend to include the task force.
We can do a second.
Okay, that's fine. All right, Kingsley, before we start, Steve, can we just clarify? I think our families and students are very interested to know. So we have never, to our knowledge, been impacted or notified or had anything to do with ICE.
No, we have not.
So immigration's custom and
enforcement.
So the district, to our knowledge, has never
Not to our
had
knowledge, no.
contact. I just wanted to start there because I think, the history would say we haven't been contacted from ICE, and we expect that to continue. I just want to be blunt and clear about it. We expect that to continue. We do not expect to have engagement at the school, and our resolution calls out what we do if that happens, but that's just a fundamental expectation. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Kingsley.
So I'll be brief. Again, just as you've already voted for supportive resolution for our immigrant students and families, I always want to start off, and many of you know the district mission statement, obviously the school board equity statement that you voted on. Just want to focus on the fact that as we're going through this process and the importance of going through this process, that in the mission statement it talks about the resources and efforts and families of the entire community, and so that's why again we're talking about the task force and wanting to engage families from different walks of life to ensure they're a part of this process. And then with the school board equity statement, as it talks about the district is particularly focused on student experiences and outcomes. One of the things that we want to make sure is that we remove as many barriers as possible to ensure that we have an amazing learning environment for all of our students. And as many of the speakers spoke about today, this has been impacted by things that have happened, obviously in this community, communities across Iowa, communities across the nation. And so it's important and incumbent upon us to make sure that we're doing what we can to not only clarify schools' responsibility in relation to this, but also what we can do to support our students in a variety of different ways. So I just want to focus on just a quick, frequently asked questions. This information is on the website. Can the Iowa City Community School District ask about a child's immigration status? No. The Iowa City Community School District may not question a child about his or her immigration status or demand to see proof of legal immigration status. And another question that came up in relation to some of the emails that I think that you received and I've received as well. We're focusing on the school element. Obviously, we're going to be partnering with different community partners and immigration attorneys and of the sort. But there are parts that we aren't going to be able, or information we're not going to be able to provide. There are different organizations that are going to help or are helping in that regard, and so we will be trying to get information to our parents and families about these groups and organizations. But again, this part is just there to make sure that people realize that from our school capacity standpoint, we're really focused on, again, the students and the parents in relation to the school environment, and then making sure they're accessing or making sure we're providing access to resources for things that concern actual immigration rights. And what do we want to accomplish? What do we hope to accomplish? One of the things that's very important to me is just a rapid response protocol to assist our students when their family member or members have been detained, deported, or removed. I appreciated, again, the comment that was made during community comment. We want to be prepared. Our students are feeling concerned. And, we're talking about kids. And I think that some of the email communication and some that you've received and I received has somewhat forgotten that element. And when we're talking about kids, we want to do what we can to make sure that they're a part of the best environment and we have a plan in place to making sure they're getting the support they need. We also want to develop a plan. Some of this is already underway to make sure our staff are clear on the federal guidelines as it pertains to FERPA and how it relates to immigration. We also want to develop clear guidelines. I think you talked about, Director Lynch, in regards to the district's response to any request from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And then one of the things that's really very important that even Rafael mentioned is review and recommend changes to policies to ensure welcoming environment to all students. And so there is an immediate need that I think we need to address as far as support and some of the things that I just recently discussed. But there's also a long-term need. And I think this is an opportunity to get parents, staff, students engaged in a way that we can look at a lot of different policies to ensure that we're being as welcoming and inclusive as possible. I do want to quickly respond to Rafael's comment because I do think it's an important one. The email message was sent out in English. We had some translation issues, and so that information is currently being translated. I hope to get that information out tomorrow. I'm still waiting on them to send it to me, and if I can get it out tomorrow, I've also extended the deadline within that communication so there's ample time for people to apply. Additionally, it's not a first come, first serve application process. We'll review all the applications at the extended deadline as well to make sure that we have a diverse group, similarly in the way that we did for the Student Climate Survey Task Force.
Can I ask a question?
Questions? Yeah.
Kingsley, can you make sure you translate your slides just so that they can be posted so people can see?
Yeah, I literally just did them today, and
No,
so
I understand.
will,
I'm just saying for the future. I'm not. That's not me picking on you at all about that. And just to kind of go back a little bit to add to what President Lynch was saying, that I know that we haven't had any issues with ICE in the past, but I understand how people can feel that way given the changes that are happening in our we have lots of data to support that in our country. And so I want to reemphasize that fear is real. I also want to dispel the myth that it's not just our Latino students. This also is impacting so many of our other students from all different backgrounds, but many times it's very easy to just focus on our Latino students because that's how sometimes it comes out in the news. But in reality, when we say immigrant students, we have over 51 languages or something spoken in this district. And so that's impacting lots and lots of children. And so I just want to keep that in our mindset that we want all of our children to be safe because you don't know just because of how you look at someone or what language they speak, what their status is. And we're all residents here in this community, and we should all be supportive of one another. So.
I just wanted to point out, I think the resolutions are in multiple languages in the packet too, right?
The resolutions are in multiple languages in the packet, and I also printed out for people that are interested outside.
I just wanted to say I was very happy to see that. So, I mean,
Yeah, even though we may not have had instances in our schools, our community is not immune to this happening. And I relayed an individual who I feel has to be on this committee to Kingsley before the meeting, where a parent was deported and the children were left behind, and this individual helped that community, or the kids that were left in our community. And it's not just an issue with school, it's an issue with food, it's an issue with housing, it's a multifaceted issue. And even though we can be happy that it hasn't happened inside here, it does happen in our community. Children are affected, and it is real. It is a real fear. I spent 4 years in Central America from 84 to 90. I was going there for economic reasons, and if anything went bad, I was coming back to America. I had an American passport. But I did have local authorities let me know when my renewal date was coming up until I had permanent residency status. And for our families here, it is a definite worry for them, and I think this resolution goes a long way. And I hope that the committee too draws from county, city, other supports, because we're one part of that, but it is a bigger thing to make sure that in instances that we're ready to help the whole part of the family, not just the educational part.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that as I read the resolution, which is for the task force, great. One thing, I don't know if it needs to be specified in here, but one thing that I see that needs to be addressed is that it's not just all about deportation. It's also about not applying for benefits, not going to the emergency room when you need to, not having food at home, not having childcare because you're afraid to do the paperwork. And I know in my work, my paid work, I'm seeing that every day, and it's real. And I'm concerned that that we want to make sure that our task force doesn't just focus on the plan of what we will do if immigration comes to our neighborhood, but that it's not just about that. It's as it says in here, the emotional well-being, but also just the physical health of children, and anticipating, because these families aren't going to come to us and say, I don't have any food at home. And I know our teachers are really great at picking stuff up, but if we can just make sure that's a real focus on the task force, I think that'd be great. I don't know if that needs to be specified. But.
There were other things that I think that y'all also brought up at the work session that I wasn't able to directly incorporate into the resolution, but that's where I had the language that, but are not limited to the following items. And so any other items that may be in your purview that you want us to look at, we can. And there's been some additional things that we've talked about at the staff level that we're also looking at as well. Thank you.
I think Kingsley, too, we talked, the committee's empowered to go where you want to go, right? I mean, focus where you want to focus and tell us and help us. And I think we all agree with Director Roseland's point of view. And this is an empowered committee to, if there's a direction we need to go, then please take us that way. Let's talk about it.
So I'm very excited to be supporting this step, and I probably will amend the motion to, or we'll just make the second motion, but in evolution, there are sometimes cataclysmic events that force organisms to move ahead more rapidly than in their evolution than had initially been anticipated. And it's also said that necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that these concerns expressed by some of our parents in the our community commenters in the now a little over 3 years working with the Center for Worker Justice, hearing the concerns from individuals. Due to recent events, I am really excited to be in support of this, and the fact that it took a cataclysmic event to give this the final push. I'm really glad to have this on the table, and appreciate your hard work on putting it together, and hope that we can provide some support and some reassurance and calm some of the concerns and fears that our students and families have. And they're very real.
I just want to help people understand, and you can confirm this if I'm right. I mean, even though this is coming up right now for obvious reasons, I mean, it's never been the task of the school district to do immigration enforcement. And, when I look at this resolution, what I see it saying is, we're going to stick to our mission, which is educating and supporting our students. And we're not going to be drafted into a different mission, which belongs to some federal agency. And as I understand, constitutionally, we couldn't be drafted into it. So I hope people understand that we're not asking any of our employees to violate the law in any way, because we're just sticking to what our mission is by doing this. I mean, that's right, isn't it? We're not putting anybody in a position of having to do anything they're not supposed to do legally.
Correct. I mean, that's one of the things that has come across recently as we've sent the email out as far as concerns. And we're going to support our students as much as possible, obviously under the school law that I talked about previously. But we're not going to put our staff in positions where they're violating the law. And
Just want to make a brief comment. I appreciate everyone that's come the last few weeks to speak about this, and I've only received one email on the other side of this, and the thing that stuck with me on that email was that at the end of it says that we need to stay out of personal politics and focus more on education, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're focusing on educating these students. That's the goal. I have no desire to not have these kids be educated. I would love to erase the fear out of that situation that those kids are facing, and I hope that this task force will help us get to that point.
It's all been said, so I'll just say I couldn't be happier to support these two resolutions, and I can't wait to see what the task force comes back with. So with that, further discussion? We'll do a second.
Okay, let's do a second.
Can I ask a question? Is on the resolution it says May? Is that too soon to come back? I mean, I've been on a couple task force lately. Still on a couple.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about as far as short-term and long-term implications. From a short term, we do think it's necessary to develop a plan that speaks to the immediate needs of our students and the fears currently happening. But there are some long-term implication things that we've even already discussed again at the staff level, and I've talked to other community members as well, that will happen beyond May. But I do want to make sure we come back to you, not only from your benefit, but also the public's benefit, with some timely recommendations to address that immediate need. But yes, again, kind of going back to my slide, that was the important part, because around reviewing policies that continue in our district right now to make sure that we're more welcoming and inclusive, that's something that, again, kind of to Director Lynch's point, the focus could be somewhat broad in relation to that, and that will take a little bit more time.
It's just nice to report it before the end of school, right? I mean, that's kind of a milestone, but. All right, further discussion? All right, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim, and entertain a motion on the task force resolution.
I move that we create a task force to develop a plan to support students and families impacted by immigration enforcement.
Second.
Is the second Latasha?
Yeah, I'm claiming it.
Get the next, possession arrow goes to you, Phil, next time.
Excuse me?
Possession arrow goes to you next time.
Oh, okay.
You can get it next time, Phil.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to
I'd
vote?
lose a jump.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank those that have engaged with us over the last few weeks or months, and I hope, again, our students and families feel very supported, and yet you absolutely have our unanimous support. So, Kingsley, is there anything else you need from us tonight? All right, thank you. Moving on to the next topic. Legislative update, Steve?
Sure, I'll be real quick. We are moving into the end of the next phase of the legislative process, so we'll be at the end of the second funnel by Friday of this week. We've got multiple bills that are moving right now. Probably the two that are of most interest to us as a district have to deal with home rule and flexibility in equity and funding. Those two are both likely to make it through the funnel and into next week's legislative session. Equity piece would be of less importance to us because of some of the focus that it has on fixing some issues that are not necessarily germane to us today, but certainly across the state as a whole, addressing the transportation issue and fixing the difference in per pupil funding across the state is one that has divided a lot of people, and getting that resolved would allow us to move forward with that in the rearview mirror. That home rule piece still may wind up being amended before it gets through, but for those of you that know that, that would put schools in the same position that cities and counties are in and move us away from Dillon's rule. Some pros and cons to that, but again, that looks like it's moving through the funnel and will be into next week's legislative session.
It only somewhat moves to home rule, right? I mean, it's not...
Right, it's a limited home rule because it's not a constitutional amendment.
So, any comment on the push to change school board elections to coincide with November elections?
There is
what that might do to the cost from our general fund, just out of curiosity?
It's a very minimal impact on our general fund, but I know that part of the rationale in the discussion on the floor was that putting those two elections together would mean one less election. And in some jurisdictions, there was discussion that that was a substantial savings for them. In our district, that is not a substantial savings.
So just perfect case in point, North Liberty, for instance, one municipality, two school districts, one auditor. I see potential voting day chaos without multiple ballots for multiple participants.
We could have some challenges in some of the areas of voting in our district.
We sure could.
Yes.
All right, further discussion on legislative update? Thanks, Steve. Moving into operational work. Next item on the agenda is Transportation Committee update, Steve.
Yep, we're going to have Joan come up. Joan's been meeting with a group. You'll recall that this is actually part of a multi-year process where we had folks come together and examine issues in regard to how we provide support for students to ensure high levels of attendance. One of the challenges that we have with student achievement is directly correlated to student attendance in school, and so we put a committee together to look at that at the elementary level. The committee has now also looked at that at the secondary level and had some subsidiary discussions about activity busing. So Joan's going to give us an update on that.
Thank you for your time tonight. I was before this committee, or before the board, I think in December as well. So I'm giving you an update, and I think probably, as you know, just a review of where we've come. As Steve said, last year we really focused on elementary and really tried to analyze transportation barriers and how that related to attendance. So we have an update on that. And then we also, this time, took a look at secondary attendance. And then we also wanted to look at some extracurricular activities and what are barriers to participation in those. In addition to transportation, we know, recognizing that there are other issues. And then finally, just kind of exploring the feasibility of an activity bus, particularly for those attendance areas that are shifting to the Kirkwood area to west and northwest. I mean, Alexander to west and northwest, and Kirkwood to north central. So for the elementary piece, we're calling it attendance support busing now, because in the past it was discretionary busing and it was pay-to-ride busing and it was mandatory busing. It was really confusing. So really we're defining our terms just to help our communication plan. And we identified areas with students that lived between that 1 to 2 mile mark that had socioeconomic barriers to attendance. We still have pay-to-ride for those areas that don't have socioeconomic transportation barriers, but still need transportation to school. And you'll recall, and I'm sure you won't forget, that last year we decreased some of our bus routes, and about 400 less students are being bused this year than last year because we eliminated some of those discretionary routes. So on the left, or on the right there, is kind of where we currently have buses through attendance support busing. Some you'll see are combined with mandatory busing and also with pay-to-ride, so it isn't like that bus is completely out of that attendance support busing line item.
And Joan, just while you're on this slide, while we reduced busing, we increased the attendance support busing.
Right.
So the students with the greatest barriers to transportation
Right.
got increased busing.
Right. So something that our committee did was also then just look at the initial data. And so what we learned we added at Kirkwood. So Kirkwood and Horn were the two areas that we added busing as well. And the attendance at Horn increased by 73% and at Kirkwood by 58%. And the Targies decreased at Kirkwood by 92%. So now the N is pretty small because there's a high mobility, but for the kids that received this, it made a dramatic difference in their attendance. And so for the kids who had existing busing, we don't really have that before and after because they've been getting busing for a long period of time.
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. So that's the good news. And I think transportation is so expensive, but it's critical if you want kids to learn, they have to be there. So I think that's kind of our committee's big takeaway.
Joan, do we not have any attendance support busing at secondary level at all?
Well, we have some discretionary bus routes at the secondary level, but the vast majority are at the elementary level. So the committee also just kind of reviewed where gaps might be, and I would say we probably spent a fair amount of time talking about those smaller pockets of where you don't have that many kids who are having transportation barriers, but they still exist. So we brainstormed some solutions on that. So I'd say, the biggest consideration that we would consider for next year is for those areas when you maybe have a handful of kids, could we perhaps expand the relationship that we have with a local taxi cab company for homeless kids to include kids who have those significant attendance barriers? So those extreme cases where you know, a parent has a serious health issue and it's a kid that can't walk a mile and a half or whatever to school, and just having another resource for the student family advocates to do that. I think another consideration is that we've just had some implementation struggles with pay to ride sometimes, because we're kind of going from a service that everybody gets to more of a means-tested service. And so at Alexander in particular, there was a lot of confusion, I think, particularly with some of the language barriers we're dealing with. So, you know, we would propose if, you know, and again, this is not our decision to make, but I think having, including some additional streets in the Alexander area would probably alleviate some of the confusion and some of the implementation issues. So, so moving ahead to secondary.
So Joan, are you just going to do that?
What's that?
You're just going to make those adjustments?
No, that's not my call to make.
Yeah.
So that would be, I mean,
That's
think
what I want
that-
to clarify.
Right. No, I think what we're trying to do tonight is just kind of present what we see as issues and what the cost of those things would be. And then I think it's the administrative team and the board to decide how those priorities line
Okay,
up.
got it.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
And Joan, of the routes that you have listed here on the prior slide, the new ones would be Corville Central.
The new routes that we added last year would be Kirkwood.
No, that you're talking about adding now.
Oh, adding now. That would probably fall more into the yellow cab, taxi cab situation that we had, because the numbers that we had there were small. And I think sometimes the pay to ride process is something that sometimes it takes a little bit, so if we could have some gap support there.
I'm just wondering, of this list that you have here, which of these would be new ones that you're recommending to add for next year?
It wouldn't be maybe a specific area as much as, I'd say the hot spots that we had, you know, again, not big numbers, would be Corville Central. There was a very small pocket at Van Allen and Lucas. So that those are the areas that we felt like we weren't able to get kids on existing pay-to-ride routes and had to struggle a bit. And for some of them, they did resolve, but there was a period of time, like I don't think right now there is a waiting list for pay-to-ride at Corville Central, but there was a time where there was. So what can we do as kind of a stopgap measure?
So there really isn't a lot of expense other than the cab fares, of course, but busing-wise, there isn't an increase really that you're not.
You know, it depends on what we want to do with Alexander. You know, so that would be, you know, and that's a significant cost to add another bus. But I think, you know, again, we just have to weigh the pros and cons of all of that. Having kind of that stopgap measure cab thing is a relatively small expense compared to an entire bus. So, okay. So, anything else on elementary? Okay.
Just
So,
one quick one on here, Joan. On this taxi cab, you're showing in fiscal 17, you have 0, and then for 18, you're estimating 10,500. These are for cabs for activity transportation.
this is just to help kids get to school when we're having struggles and they aren't in a current attendance support busing area.
Okay. And your $60 is transporting one student, or? that's just
No,
an
that would
average
be,
cost?
that would be multiple students.
That's multiple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it probably would be multiple students, but not necessarily the same student all year. You know, it's.
Gotcha.
Because there's such a revolving door with some of this. Okay. So at the secondary level, then we pulled together the secondary folks, and we did the same thing. We took a look, we pulled attendance data for a 6-week period and looked at who didn't meet our threshold of 90%. And then we analyzed, of those kids, how many had a transportation barrier. So this is what we had. The numbers are pretty small because it was a 6-week period, kind of at the beginning of the year. And what we found is there are, you know, the junior highs get bused at 2 miles, and at the high schools, it's not until 3 miles. And West High has a whole lot more mandatory busing than City High does. So I think the numbers there kind of speak to the need that we have just because of how transportation falls within the district. And then digging a little deeper into this, we broke down of those kids that live between 2 and 3 miles, you know, how many at each site, how many were between 2 and 3, and how many between 2 1.5 and 3. So one of the things that we really wrestled with, and Matt helped us with the boundary changes for next year, is that some of this is, going to change again. And so we really kind of went back and forth about what would be the best solution. And again, for our homeless program, we give bus passes to kids who are in a homeless situation. And so what we kind of piloted this year is I used a little bit of money from the foundation, and we got bus passes for those kids that live between 2.5 and 3 miles. We call it the donut kids. And that has really helped those kids get to school. So that, is a solution that we would see as potential to help with the attendance issue for the secondary level. And it's really, it's hard to know exactly how things will shake out next year with lines being drawn differently. So that was kind of our outcome on the secondary attendance busing issue. So then this is probably the most complicated piece of this whole work on transportation is just the whole challenges to extracurricular activities. And so first of all, we collaborated with the United Way's Out of School Initiative, and we did some focus groups. The district staff identified those kids who aren't currently participating in extracurricular, and then we had community members actually facilitate the conversation. And then we also did just a short survey at the junior highs. So we're just trying to gather some data, like what is the issue with extracurricular? Sorry, I'm catching up with my notes here. So, Latasha helped me with the focus groups. I took the notes and she facilitated, and the kids were really insightful in a lot of this. So transportation was a barrier that they clearly, all groups, and we did a focus group at each of the secondary schools, clearly identified, but there were some other things that they also identified. So the extracurricular activities that we have, particularly at the high schools, are really really competitive, and they're also really time consuming. So there's some kids who really don't have 10 to 12 to 15 hours a week extra to commit to an extracurricular because they're working, they're taking care of family, they're doing their homework. So there's, some of them said, having something that didn't require quite the commitment would be a helpful thing. And then related to that, a number of students said they didn't participate because of their own stress and anxiety, and they were fearful of being a part of a team and not maybe doing well. And so they were interested in something that would maybe reduce the overall stress. And I know that mental health came up in every group that we talked about. So maybe even looking at some mindfulness or some art therapy or some of those things that don't require, could actually reduce the stress rather than probably even increasing it. And then finally, the students in our group in particular, they were just really insightful about, kids tend to hang out with kids who are like them, and we need more opportunities to maybe facilitate kids kind of, stretching themselves a little bit and being more welcoming and inclusive of others. So our group said, even when they sat down, the kids sat with their friends, and they said, we need more opportunities like this where we can talk with kids who aren't who we usually hang out with and get comfortable with, so that activities are more diverse and we feel like it's more welcoming of everybody. So that was some really good suggestions of the kids, and I think if we're going to continue with this, we need to involve the kids that we had in that. It was really, they were insightful. So, and then for the survey, we surveyed about 1,300 kids, I think it was, which is about 68% of our junior highs. And we asked them questions about what they're currently participating in the fall, what they plan to participate in the winter. And then I pulled out here on this table is what, if they weren't involved in any sports or clubs or activities, why would that be? So if you'll look down, the responses left blank. I'm kind of making a leap here that those are the kids who are participating in things, which would be roughly about 50% of the kids. So one thing that, just as a district, what do we want that number to be? What is our goal? Is 50% good? Should it be higher? Should it be less? I think that's just one of those, questions to ponder. And then if you'll look, the number one issue of why they weren't participating was because there weren't club sports activities that interested them, which I found to be a bit of a surprise to me. And I think along those lines, soccer was one thing that it was a ginormous response. So I think the principals at the junior highs are looking at trying to develop a soccer club to address that. And transportation was an issue, and I think this doesn't really take into account, this is current point in time of those kids who will be living in a different attendance area. So that's, our committee was quick to say, yeah, well, things might be different next year on that particular question. Then, let me see. So then, moving ahead, we also then take a look at the junior high extracurricular activity schedule, which consulted with the music and sports and the building principals. And there's a pretty decent pattern with a little bit of time that overlaps. At the high school level, I couldn't even begin to summarize of when anything stops or starts. Space for sports is at a premium, and so practices are all over the map, and so it made my brain hurt trying to figure out how you could possibly get any kind of thing together at the high school level. But what we did brainstorm then at the committee is just if we were going to have some kind of activity bus shuttle, this is kind of a sample schedule of what that would look like. We would pick up, and this would be if Alexander, Pheasant Ridge, Northwest. We'd pick up at Broadway Street because that's where most of the kids that we are concerned about live in that attendance area, right by the neighborhood center. And then Northwest said that they're also concerned about Pheasant Ridge because the Pheasant Ridge kids have to negotiate 2 public transportation systems. So go to Broadway Street, go to Pheasant Ridge, then go to Northwest Junior High, and then just the reverse in the evening. And in talking with the principals, they thought 6 o'clock in the evening would be about the time that most things were done, but they were concerned about supervision because, okay, so the show choir is done at this time, but football's not done till this time, and so what are the show choir kids going to do while they're waiting around for the football players? So we need to probably work in some kind of supervision plan because I don't think anyone wants a whole bunch of junior high kids running around with no adults to supervise. And then we also talked about things are different on game days and concert days, so we would probably just run the activity bus as usual, but then for out-of-town events, the bus that went to whatever Cedar Rapids would drop the kids back at Broadway Street and Pheasant Ridge before they went back to Northwest rather than doing Northwest. Otherwise, the kids would be stranded if they got home later than the shuttle bus. So these are the kind of details that it was head scratchers for sure, but this is the best that we came up with. And I think the thing that we struggled the most with as a committee is just sticker shock. It's expensive. And so weighing out the cost-benefit analysis of everything else that's on our to-do list in the district and the budget things that have come out since this whole process started, it's roughly just short of $60,000 per site. So it's a chunk of change. And I think the other thing to consider and that we talked about as a committee quite a bit is just the management of it and the logistics. There's a lot of pieces that a lot of people would have to be involved with to make sure that ran smoothly.
So per site, you mean like per junior high?
What's that?
Per site means per junior high.
Right.
So you'd have to
Yeah.
times it by 3 if.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and I think Southeast was not a priority for us just because they do have public transportation there, and we also have started the Boys and Girls Club there that provides transportation. So I think that we discussed North Central and Northwest more than we did Southeast.
Okay, just because there's different options. Got
Right,
it.
and I think that was the other thing is if there is public transportation, even back to our bus pass proposal, for attendance, kids could use that same bus pass to get home after an extracurricular activity. So I think the bus pass thing allows for more flexibility and is certainly cheaper.
So are you just thinking junior high sites?
I think was our big takeaway. I think the number of kids at the high school that would be in a set place to take a bus would be so small that I think we'd either have to run a bunch of buses or, I think probably we could problem solve those individual cases and maybe do something like a cab if we had a kid that was really stuck. But at this point in time, I just don't think that that would be an effective use of a bus, just because of how the schedule falls.
So just to clarify, it sounds like you don't have a hard recommendation. It sounds like you got some things you want to talk about, or what do you see as next steps?
I think the, particularly the secondary committee didn't feel like there was too much to do right now and too many budget considerations to make a hard recommendation. We wanted to present you with the facts, with some ideas, and then I think it's a combination of the board and administration of where you take that.
So Steve, what's your thoughts? Like, will we take this to work session, and when, or what?
Well, I think we can do that. I think one of the things that we know, having talked about it up on one of the earlier slides, one of the issues that we know is actually beyond busing is the issue with support through bus passes and other things like that. We've had some support from the foundation for that this year. We'll probably need to look for an alternative for that for next year. In regards to the attendance support busing and the activity busing, I think probably part of that will need to be wrapped into the budget allocation process too.
So when would we discuss this next?
I know the committee continues to meet. I don't know when the next scheduled meeting is, but we'd come back to you then after we've had a further follow-up with them.
So would that be May, or what?
What's the timeline for your budget
Yeah, we'd be in
allocation
May.
process? Yeah. I think depending on what resources we have to work with will kind of depend on how we roll this out. So that's...
The committee talked about prioritization of some of the goals. They hadn't come to any firm conclusions about that, but I think that's part of the next part of the process there.
Can I add anything?
Of course.
Well, so one thing about the high school thing, Chris, was that a lot of the kids, when we talked to them, were like, well, I'll just get a ride with my friend. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or I don't go to that anyway, so why would I need, so that was kind of a lot of them were like, that's not as big of a deal to me, from the kids, at least we talked to. But one of the things that I did want to come back and stress was that kids didn't feel welcome at our activities. We have a lot of activities at our schools, and they have to be some of the most non-diverse. I mean, once we get past junior high, especially into high school, and what I'm starting to see is people are coming up with kind of like silo, this is for the kids of color, and then this is for everybody. I mean, that's really what's happening. Like, we're seeing things instead of being more integrated and finding solutions about how we work together with our kids. People are finding solutions about how to separate our kids out. And so I'm a little concerned about that, because sometimes when we're in places and show choir, or when we have all of our kids come in, it's not representative of our schools. And so I'm not sure what the answer to that is. Is that a task force? I don't know what that is, but I do think we need to pay attention, especially in our sports and in our music, about how segregated they are. And I'm using that word intentionally because it's not reflective of our district. We have 40% of our kids are kids of color, and that's not reflective in our activities. And so, and literally people will send me pictures like, this is what the show choir at this school looks like, and I'm pretty sure, you know what I'm saying? So people are actually uncomfortable about it, but they're kind of afraid to talk about that. So I'm not sure what the exact answer is, but what the kids are saying is, their words were very coded, and they're being very specific with me about saying, we know that that's not for us. That's not intended for us. Do not apply. It's what came back from that. And so they're just like, for kids like us. And so some of these were groups of kids of color like, us. And they were speaking very coded. And so that really concerned me, because that's not how this district always was. There was a time in this district where it didn't matter who you were, where you came from, what you looked like. If you wanted to run on the track, we'll find you some shoes. And I don't know, I'm not saying that those same folks aren't out there and willing to do that. I'm just thinking we need to find a different way about how we are addressing this, because we're not getting more together, we're getting more separate. And so I don't know what that's some work we have to do here in our district. We have to do that work. It's hard work. Nobody wants to do it, but it's hard work that needs to be done.
And I think it really ties into the work that Kingsley's doing too. And the kids were really good about talking about it. Like, we don't talk about this, and we need to have more of these activities where we, learn from each other. And so I think some that ties so well into our overall equity plan of getting those conversations going.
So I'm hearing we'd pencil in first meeting in May, work session, continue the conversation. And then by when do you need, if action's required, like operationally? By, the end of May, or is it June, or?
We'd, end of May, end of June. By the end of June, we'd need that.
You had a few tweaks that sound pretty simple, so we'd decide that by the end of May or early June, and no problem.
I don't envy the position that anyone's in right now, trying to figure out how to spend the, 2 dimes that we have left over for anything. So I could appreciate the tough decisions that you have to make on all of this. And it's important, but there are so many other important things too.
We have 2 dimes?
Well, probably not even that, but anyway.
Joan, I just want to say that I think it's very important that we figure this out, because we decided these boundaries, and we want to be able to make these kids, or allow these kids to participate. So if it's going to cost us $57,920 per site, we need to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I raised that high school issue, because part of what seemed to trigger all this was sending kids from Kirkwood up to Liberty and figuring out how they're going to get to and from. And, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see how much demand there is, but especially if there's going to be a junior high bus for Kirkwood kids going to and from, and this is going to disappear. That does feel less than ideal. I know none of it's ever going to be ideal, but wouldn't want to lose track of that at least.
And another consideration is that it's typically been our policy not to put junior high kids on with senior high kids, but, if we maybe adapted that policy, and if the bus is going to North Central, and it might work to put a kid on Liberty on that bus too, so.
Yeah, let's get, if you could think about the creative solutions. I mean, this committee's been great at developing creative solutions, so for May, if you could just reopen, I think it'd be great to just have kind of a creative session. Are there other ways to do it? I'll just, I'll leave it for May, but I'd be inclined to try something and then decide that there's no demand. You know what I mean? Like, call it a lead model, we're going to try it, and if there's no demand, it works its way out. But sometimes you don't know what the demand's going to be until you try it, right? And that's what I wonder about. It's almost like the Alexander, where we said, hey, this is a lead model, let's try it. And that one was a little more straightforward in terms of, we knew the need. But I just tell you, my point of view is, let's go try something.
Right.
And then demonstrate there's really no demand for it.
And I think whatever we would do, we would monitor the data very closely, and if you didn't have a certain threshold of the kids using it, then we would find a cheaper solution.
Yeah, if there's only 10 kids using it, then you can look at your other creative solutions that are cheaper, and off you go, and Well, great.
Just one more thing, Chris. It doesn't have to do necessarily with transportation, but it was in this report, and I was just wondering if it would be possible for Matt and Steve to look into what it would cost to run a soccer program at the junior high level. I think Cedar Rapids has soccer, if I'm not mistaken, at the junior high level.
Yeah, we could prepare some cost figures on what that would be, and even a couple different options on if it would be club versus actual sanctioned sport, and what that would be. We do get a lot of requests from students and even some faculty about that, so we could prepare something like that and bring that. Would you see that on the same timeline, some before the end of the year, conversation for next year?
Yeah, I think it's the same.
The advantage we have at Northwest and Southeast too is they're right by the Parks and Rec, and maybe there's some partnerships that we could have there as well.
Depends what you heard in the focus groups, but I would focus more on the rec end. You know what I mean? Sounds like kids want to have fun and just play. I don't know. But you tell me from the focus groups.
Pretty competitive high school programs, I would assume. That.
I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit about both. I think some feel there's a no, so why try? And then some are like, they just too competitive and doing too much, and I don't feel like dealing with all that. I am really concerned about the mental health piece that popped up at both of our high schools, because that was something that was lots of conversation about kids feeling anxiety and depression and even suicidal tendencies and different things, and not having any space. But that's come up multiple times, that they don't feel like, where is it that I go? And we had some discussion about, we have some of those things in our school, but parents need to sign off on that. And sometimes parents are not so eager to be like, yes, you can go and see a psychiatrist at the school. So, I mean, I don't know what creative solution we need to come up with, but more and more I'm hearing more about teens who are just really struggling with, they're labeling it, I'm having anxiety. They're labeling it, I'm having trouble with depression. And so, and we're not addressing it. And then we want to do all these like ALICE trainings and this and this and this for our kids, but our kids are crying out saying, I need help here. And then we don't do anything about it. So that concerns me.
I mean, come back with options. But that's why I was kind of triggered to, sometimes we forget sports is like supposed to be fun. And, I know we like competition, but I'd be just worried about the kids that just want to play for fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some kids that was really eager to do that. I mean, I think it's just really kind of getting back with some of those kids because they had some really great kind of creative solutions. Even they were like, let's do a mental health club where we can just come in and just debrief. But, they were really looking for solutions about how to handle some of those.
They were
issues.
really open about
Yes,
it. I mean,
to
I was
options.
amazed at how open they were talking about their anxiety and depression. And,
Yeah.
and that was a huge barrier.
Yeah, and that was male and female. I mean, it really was across different demographics in that group,
And, maybe
Very
we got to be
younger.
careful not to suggest the answer, just create the environment.
No, I'm
that
not saying that is the exact solution. That's something that the kids
Should
added as a potential
on.
solution, but that doesn't mean that is the solution. But I think we should at least invest some time in trying to come up with some options, knowing that it's not going away, especially with all the, we just had tons of families here talking about immigration and the stress of children. I think
Right.
that came up every single time. So
Right.
it's a real thing. And so I'm not sure. I know it kind of, but if we're talking about kids and education, it's very difficult to focus on whatever it is that's up front, and if you're having that kind of stress and anxiety.
And I know our student and family advocates at the secondary schools are slammed with kids who are struggling. And so I think a more systemic
Yeah.
look at this would be really good.
All right, Joan, as always, thank you very much
Thank you.
for the
All right.
discussion on this topic. We'll come back in May and talk the whole thing, first meeting in May,
Okay.
work session.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the IPM task force. Dave, I think we left it a little open to come back or not come back, and it sounds like your committee's made great progress. Maybe you don't need board action, but you've put a proposal in our package, and perhaps we want to support that tonight.
We just put together a summary of the numbers that we came up with, and I believe Director Hemingway added a draft from our task force that we started with, and the number was 189 acres. And we're confident.
I'd entertain a motion to support the,
I make a motion that we support the proposed Chemi-R pesticide-free turf commitment for the 189 acres specified in the document provided.
your second.
Second.
Discussion? Dave, I'll just say, I mean, the Integrated Pest Management Committee's been outstanding.
Right.
It's a
And-
great
and,
example of what we're trying to develop.
And having some very lively and discussions with the group, everyone recognized this as a positive step forward. It came with a lot of work by staff and community members putting a lot of time in. And, we support them. We want them to run with this. This is the start. We hope that this is something we can expand and kind of grow with. But it does specify and show that we have playgrounds and areas on our schools that are pesticide-free, and that was the goal of the committee in the first place. So I think it was a great thing, and urge support with it.
You said grow with, like in a...
Yeah.
In
Yep,
okay.
grow as in expand, and next year hopefully we can say there's more acreage and everything in that, but.
I just meant growing, preferably without fertilizer.
Further discussion?
I really want to, Director Hemingway and I have sat on multiple meetings over the last approximately year and a half. And as Phil said, so we've had some very spirited discussions. We have a wide variety of opinions in the room. And from where we started in September, October of 15 to where we are right now is a huge move. And I'm excited to see the district go ahead with this. And if I may, Phil and I were talking beforehand that this may be something that, to our knowledge, no other district in the state has embraced this as our district has. Would you say that's?
I think that may be true.
Ben, do you know of any?
I don't know that I can say that there's many, if there are any out there that have embraced it to the level that we have.
Okay.
If it's not a class of its own, it doesn't take long to take attendance.
Perfect. So.
All right, further discussion?
I just have a quick question. So at elementary schools where there's like a kickball field or a baseball field, are those considered in the general turf, or are those considered, how are you dealing with those?
All of those grassy areas at the elementary schools are covered under this.
So you'll be seeding them this spring?
Yes.
Because I know that some of them are not seeded now and there's weeds growing up and things, so that's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in both, and the ChemER draft was added. Both documents pretty much share the same, it's the same information, but anyone who has questions, if they look at both documents, it'll pretty much answer any questions as far as where the Chem 3 is and that, and like I say, it was a group effort, and everybody, I think, agrees we're making positive progress going in the right direction.
All right, further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Can I ask, was Kirschling the second?
I did.
Russell, thank you. Online voting is open. Yours didn't register.
I voted yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim, and thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Before we go to the next item, can you just remind me where we stand with that? I just have to be reminded each time about what happened with the policy that was supposed to come back to us from IPM, and it seemed like it came back to us, and then we sent it to P&G, and then it was going to go back to the committee, and I just can't remember where it stopped.
That's still sitting back in the committee, to my knowledge.
Okay.
I can check with Jeff Lauer
Is there sort of an ETA for when it comes back to us, or?
I'm sure. I can check. We can check with Jeff Lauer. I think we're planning a meeting. Is it April? I think we're planning in April.
Yeah, Dave?
Dave, are we planning an IPM meeting April?
Late April, yes.
Late April, okay.
And we approved the policy. It was just a question of refinements, right?
Right, it was about refinements.
Okay, good, Chris. All right, moving on to the next item is the draft Scanlon exchange agreement. Craig, and really what we're doing tonight is setting the hearing and the resolution, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the purpose of the board agenda this evening is basically to set the hearing for the disposition of the property as required by Iowa law. Whenever a public entity sells property, it has to advertise that it's doing so in case someone wants to come and discuss that issue. And so Attorney Holland put together a publication for the newspaper, which I've subsequently sent off and has prepared a resolution for you this evening for you to act upon. The resolution in the board doc is the old version. The new version was handed to you at 2 minutes to 6 this evening when I got it. And basically it just changes one thing. The holding company that actually holds the land is not the Scanlon Farm, it's actually a Scanlon family. And they have 4 different holding companies apparently, and so we just got the wrong one on the first draft. So that's really the only difference in the resolution. I did provide you with Attorney Holland's summary of the exchange agreement from last October when you last considered this. It has not changed in any substantive way. The outlot is still the size that it was before. The finances are the same, and the terms of the agreement are the same as they were before.
Thanks, Craig. I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the resolution for, what's the wording here? Resolution for public hearing regarding the Scanlon property.
Exchange agreement.
Exchange agreement, thank you.
That's fine. I'll put it
Just
in.
hold up cue cards, I'm good.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Craig. Anything else you need from us?
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the fiscal 18 budget recommendation. And again, really what we're doing is setting the public hearing date, right?
That's correct. So you're receiving superintendent's recommendation for the overall certified budget. This is a pretty cut and dried process that the state puts us through each year. It's simply to make the budget of large enough size so that we'll have the flexibility to have the spending within the categories so specified. Your questions at the last meeting, I returned an email to all of you on March 1st providing a follow-up, and then on February 28th was the first email, and the second email was on March 1st following up on your questions. As far as the tax rate for public consumption, it's virtually unchanged from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 18. That's one of the main purposes of the certified budget and one of the main purposes of the public hearing that will be held on the 11th. We have to submit our budget to the state by the mandatory April 15th date. This year, because it's on a weekend, we get an extra day. But that's neither here nor there. Are there any questions on that process?
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the
Hearing.
Cue card.
Second. Further discussion?
Well, I guess I'm still struggling with this question of how what we're committing ourselves to by voting for this budget. I know you're only committed to those 4 big categories, as I understand it, right? And those are just do not exceed numbers. But it's still a leap for me to find that there's not some kind of policy decision in deciding how to split that pie into those 4 parts. And I don't know what the right moment is, but it seems like, I've been through a cycle and a half while I was on the board, and there's no sort of regularly scheduled process, at least for us to, as a board, talk about that big picture allocation among these different priorities. And then you do look at the numbers, and some of them do seem to be accelerating faster than others, and for a couple of years. And so, if there are, if we did, want to do something different as far as dividing up the pie, it seems like we would be constraining ourselves by voting for this without at least talking that through first. So what am I missing,
You employ the superintendent to direct the budget process. That's what I follow. He specifies the detail under which each category of expenditures, according to the program that we deliver to our students. The primary portion of that, as you can see, is in instruction, where the vast majority of all of our expenditures take place. I've shared with you in the past that nearly 90% of our budget goes for the wages and salaries of the staff that deliver the service, and most of that is rolled up in the instructional budget. There's, if we want to change the category distribution, we have to change the programming that generates the category distributions. And so we would have to start with a discussion of whether or not we're going to deliver a specific type of program and hire the staff, the salaries and all those kind of things, because that's the primary expenditure that you're looking at. And so that's where that discussion has to start. It has to start at that program level, because it just rolls up from there into these categorical funds.
But Chris, I think you're right. I mean, we've had all year to talk policy items, so, yeah, I mean, I think we're continuously talking the strategic plan. The weighted resource model is the biggest policy I think we've ever done in terms of allocating resources and all that good stuff. Discretionary busing is another good example. We made that proactively. Again, that input's in. We have all year long to do that. Now we're down to, by April 15th, you need to set the tax rate, right?
Right.
Well, what's the function of that public hearing, in theory? I know usually we don't hear from anybody at these public hearings.
The function of the public hearing is to hear from the public if they have an opinion about the tax rate that you're setting that will be administered upon the stakeholders of the school district to fund the district budget. And that's the purpose of that hearing.
What if, in theory, someone comes up to the microphone and says something really persuasive, and it's April 11th? I mean, how does it work that we have that hearing at the very last possible moment? It seems like we couldn't possibly respond to what we hear at the hearing.
That's correct. But if you remember, I shared with you the timeline that we were going to follow for this certified budget process way back in January, and this is the process that we've been following. If you want to do the process differently, we'll have to communicate that to me so that next year in the fall I can be planning on a different schedule if that's something that you're interested in.
Further discussion?
And Director Liebig, if I might add, your expenditure categories, those are really driven by the Department of Management and the Department of Education. Instruction includes all of the programming, as Craig alluded to. So that would include your regular instruction in the classroom, special ed instruction, ELL, talented and gifted. Those all fall under the instruction category per the Department of Education. So those programs are defined by the district, and then they automatically flow into those categories. So it's not an arbitrary allocation what we drop in each one. The superintendent has to fall into a certain functional category which loads into here. So it's all driven by them.
A lot of it's probably automatic, but isn't there some discretionary element to some of those numbers? And I'm looking at that. I forget exactly which line item it was. I had the numbers in front of me before, but one of those administration categories seemed to be going up awfully rapidly in the last couple of years, and maybe there's good reasons for it, but I don't feel like I fully understand what happened that caused that.
In theory, we could present this to you with all $150 million in the instruction line and $1 in every other column, but we would have to come back and amend that to the actual operational perspective a year from now when we do the amendment. So this is our closest approximation of where we're going to be next year in each one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
In my March 1st communication to you, I responded to that specific question about the administration cost. And if you remember, the general fund piece of that was only a 1.9% increase, which is pretty consistent with the type of salary benefit adjustments that had occurred during the last fiscal year. The rest of that increase is in the form of property and liability insurance in the management fund, early retirement for staff who are stepping away from our school district. All of those things roll up because the state requires us to classify them as a part of the business and administration function, like Leslie just said. That's why it increases that particular line item. It's not because administration is increasing, it's because those other items have to be coded there.
Well, but there was also an increase the year before, that was pretty sizable, and
right.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess again, maybe it's not about this particular issue. I don't know, but in the past, I remember asking at one point, it'd be interesting to just see. I think some people would like to see what we spend on our athletics budget, or where the money is going from year to year in terms of how many administrators we have, that we're paying in this building, and whether we look at it, it might be fine, but I wish there was some opportunity where it was more sort of regularly planned, where we would have more of a big picture conversation about some of those things, because people ask about them.
We break all that information out for you on a quarterly basis on the quarterly report. It has all those function areas. You can drill down and see what we're spending in all of our funds. You can see what we're spending for co-curricular You can see what we're spending for athletics, for instance.
That's kind of after we've spent it, though, right?
Excuse me?
And that's not planning for the future when you're showing us that. That's showing what we're already
That's
doing.
actual expense and against budget, right? Both of those things are in that report.
It's the best indicator of the future. Further discussion?
I have some questions. So that, what you're talking about there, and I heard you say earlier that May is when you are planning on finalizing your operational budget. Could we be a part of that process? Could we be, so you're saying you give us the reports quarterly after the fact, after the expenses have been incurred. Could we be part of the discussion of the creation of the operational budget?
I was going to say you will be part of that because some of this is a zero-sum game because there's only so much money. And so if we're going to look to expand one area of transportation, we may have to look to decrease another area of transportation, and that's what we'll bring back to the work session at the board meeting and get feedback and input on that so we better understand what your priorities are as we set those. So, you know, to Chris's point, if the intent is to reduce the amount of the athletic budget, then as Craig said earlier.
I mean,
the
that's my
discussion-
intent, just using it as an example.
Yeah.
I think I'd be just curious to see it.
Right, but then that would be a programming discussion because those budgets are flow-throughs as we build those based on the programs that we offer. And so we can, I think probably the best place to have those conversations is in a programming standpoint. So whether it's an operational or instructional programming piece, if there are issues that we have concerns about from a prioritization standpoint, and whether it's instructional or operational programming, that would be a great place to start that conversation.
So if you're hoping to have it finalized in May, would we be having that discussion in April then? Or when are you thinking?
You're talking about the transportation piece?
Just the zero-sum game, you're hoping to have it all finalized by May?
We know what we'll have allocated for transportation, and so then we'll know within that how much money we have available to spend on attendance area and discretionary transportation, and then that's what we'll bring back. So we'll know what that total value is, and so we'll be able to get input from the Transportation Committee on that, and then we'll be able to come back to the board and say, given this much money, it's likely to have more demand than there is actual supply there, and so then we'll have that conversation about how to set those priorities. The allocation of the dollars will already be set. What we spend them on will be part of that discretionary discussion that the board has.
So I have some other questions. So I was looking at the management levy and that it increased $600,000, and I was trying to understand that, and I think it's outlined on page 41. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So can you just maybe say that in layman's terms, explain that increase, because it's going from very low to quite a sizable increase.
Right. So part of the purpose of the management fund is to do some specific things for us. First of all, it pays for all property and liability insurance. We anticipate a small bump there. So we levy for an increase in what we anticipate to be premiums. We haven't paid those yet. This is a projection. We always have to be prepared for work comp claims. We don't know what those might be. Those are always a surprise to us every year. So there always has to be money available to pay for worker comp claims when they come in. I don't know who's going to leave our employment under work comp and who's not. I don't have that type of crystal ball, all right? And so that flexibility has to be in there. We also extended our early retirement program for our staff that's stepping away. Not all that's nailed down yet, and so that's an estimate, and so we put that estimate in for what we have to pay for early retirement. And then there's a big piece where we have equipment breakdown insurance, where we actually buy insurance to cover many of our IT products and other things that get broken throughout the year. That's a guess, okay? Based on past history, what you do is we provide our best estimate. And then there's a piece where we call just for cash flow purposes. This is so that we can position your budget the very best that we can, coming up on a bond referendum, so that next year we can tighten that down and only levy what's absolutely necessary and possibly provide a little bit of relief so that as we develop a little bit more of a cushion in the management fund, we don't have to be our estimates can be a little tighter next year for all of those categories that I just described. And so that's why that additional amount is in there this year. So it's to position your budget to help to give you maximum flexibility on your levy rate next year as we're holding this discussion should the bond pass.
And on the cash reserve, or I should say on page 41, down at the bottom where it has other cash reserve, the 999,000.
In the management fund? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Right, down.
That's what I just described.
Right, yeah.
Right.
What has that been in the past? Do you, I mean.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
But I mean, is it, how, is it trending neutral, or is it trending up? Is it trending down?
We took it up this year, simply to provide you the best position to be in for next year. So I can safely say it's probably higher this year than it was last year, but it usually floats, and I don't have that number for you right now. We could look back really quickly and get it, but.
I mean, I don't know if I'm hearing it right, but are we saying that we're just going to raise it this year so we can make it look like we're cutting it next year? We're not raising as much next year?
No, what this does is it positions your budget for maximum flexibility. If we don't need that next year, then we don't levy the tax next year for these items, and we can be tighter on our estimates. So we don't have to have as much in your management fund levy next year because you have more of a cushion to work with.
But the alternative would be just not to build the cushion this year and just get it next year when we would need it.
We're matching the tax rate though, Chris, so, I mean, that's the intent.
Yeah, but is it just for show is what I'm saying?
No, it's not. You're not taking it up to take it down.
It makes it look like next year it's not going up as fast?
No, I believe it's a good management strategy for you to employ, or I wouldn't do it.
It's not taking it up to take it down, it's managing the tax rate and trying to keep it stable and.
Very stable.
Based on the assumptions we've discussed since the start of this process.
Correct.
So under the management levy, I'm just curious, under the category, I'm looking at page 5, where it says other costs, cost of employment, unemployment claims, tort liability actions, policy coverage, equipment breakdown. That's where we're seeing the $600,000. So you're expecting an increase, or you're just primarily doing this?
It's just an estimate, right? Yep.
Okay.
It's our best guess at this point in time, and it may or may not come through.
Because if we only budgeted $82,000 last year, I mean,
it's a big increase.
That's a big increase.
Yeah.
I just was wondering, is there something on the horizon that?
Not that I'm aware of. Your bond referendum is the only thing I'm thinking about, and positioning your budget the best that I can position it.
It's a do not exceed budget. It's not an operational budget, right?
Right.
Further discussion?
I have some more questions. Sorry, Craig. I mean, I'm not sorry, but you know what I mean. So the transportation cost increase on the certified budget is $263,000. If you could provide this for me later, I'd be interested in knowing where you're expecting that increase to go, like where the new routes are, how much they're costing, that kind of thing, why you chose that number. Would that be possible for you to provide that later?
It would be. We're refining that all the time, as you might guess. I started a year ago and shared with you that for our unspent balance that I thought we needed to add another $300,000 or so to transportation, given all of the changes we were looking at. We're still working through that. We just met with Scott Kibbe on Monday to finalize what we think is going to happen for Liberty Transportation. We still have to figure out how many buses are coming out of Alexander and going to North Central and West. We've got the Hoover transition, the Longfellow transition to the new Hoover, where we'll be busing many more kids than we're busing now. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces to this that aren't nailed down yet. And so these are just estimates. And one of the things that I need to say to you again is that we're just building the size of a bin here. We're just building our budget with a big enough capacity that we can accommodate anything that might happen. What will actually happen is that when we get into our line item budget, we'll budget the exact expenditure and we'll move on from there. And if we miss it with our line item, with this certified budget, then we come back and amend, like we do every year at this particular time. In fact, Leslie and I were just going over the amendment for the 17 budget. We're going to have to amend specifically in the area of construction, because construction's happening faster than what it was indicated to us on our cash flow this last year, and more projects are getting done quicker, and so we're going to have to come back and actually increase that part of the budget. So it's a compliance piece, and it's just building the bin large enough, and this was a guess that took place a year ago, and I still don't have the refined numbers, and so it's the best guess that I have at the time.
Okay, and that's fine, I understand.
Yeah.
If you could, when you have that information, as far as how many routes out of Liberty, how many out of Alexander,
Sure.
those things, I would just be interested in knowing that information.
It'll probably be mid-July before we get that piece in place.
Also, another piece of information I'd be interested in knowing, you provided the percentage that the city of Iowa City of the total pie, but their amount of tax, but you didn't provide that for Coralville or North Liberty. Could you provide that as well?
Could I provide that as well?
I think it was like 42.9% for Iowa City, but I'd be interested to know what it is in the other municipalities.
I'll look to see what information they have available. I have to work with the county auditor. If they have that broken out for us in that way, I can do that.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll leave you be.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to thank you again, as I usually do, Craig, for a concise overview in the opening pages. Certainly I think the way that you present some complex information is easy to understand for anybody who wishes to dive into it. The first couple pages are excellent. I do, Director Rotland, I did want to comment when you mentioned the 42.9% that the city of Iowa City is at, I believe now. I thought it was kind of interesting how historically that's shifted. They used to be 36, we used to be 42, and now it's flip-flopped the other way around. And I appreciate some of the willing partnership from the city as we go forward. But anyhow, no. More importantly, Craig, I going through here the portion starting on page about 27 or so regarding the tax rate, how we relate to other districts. I think those are critical bits of information among the largest districts, the 25 largest districts, and especially the top 10 largest districts in the state. The value that we get on our education for our education dollar here in our district is overlooked by many, but we are in excellent position as far as revenues, excellent position as far as our on time or on target with the budget as far as historically, and I appreciate the concise format which you use to put this together. 90 plus pages is, it's not always the most entertaining read, but I like it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Are you voting?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Hemingway voting nay.
Thanks, Craig. What happens if you don't certify a budget?
I don't know. It's never happened.
It's probably not a good thing to do, right?
I suggest it wouldn't be, no.
Is there anything else you need from us?
No.
Next item on the agenda is PEPAL Life Cycle Budget. I assume it's as presented.
As presented, we do this on an annual basis. We bring you our main categories of expenditures for the areas that we have continuing needs in. We use our PEPAL funds exclusively for those building maintenance types of things. The SAVE dollars are down at the bottom. Those are more geared towards your Family Resource Center and your technology purchases in the life cycle aspect. And so they're both listed there for your review and approval for this coming year.
Entertain a motion to approve the PEPA Life Cycle budget for fiscal year 18.
I move that we approve the budget for fiscal year 2018 for the PEPA Life Cycle.
Second.
Further discussion?
The save dollars for the technology, I asked Steve about it, whether it includes that one-to-one laptop initiative. First of all, let me just clarify, this budget, unlike the one we just voted on, there's no deadline for us to do this, right?
There isn't a legal deadline until
It's
we
not
get
the same
until we
type
get
of
to the fiscal year, right?
Okay.
Right.
I kind of feel like that one-to-one laptop thing is something that seems like it's happening without ever getting a full discussion from the board. And we might discuss it and find it's a great idea. We discussed a little bit at the work session, but I still have some concerns about it. So I'm kind of inclined to maybe vote no on this until we had a more formal discussion of that.
Just to clarify, we're voting on PEPAL, right?
Well, both PEPAL and SAVE are on this same sheet, and they both have life cycle. And Director Liebig is right. The SAVE is funding a portion of the one-to-one laptop initiative.
The other part of it for me is now we're only 6 months out from that bond vote, and we're going to find out 6 months from now whether it passes. It might pass, but if it doesn't pass, I kind of don't want to be in the position of telling people, well, we don't have enough room in this school for your kids, but we got a great laptop, So the closer we get to that, the more I kind of feel like I'm not so comfortable spending our last few save dollars on this before we know whether we actually have that money that we're planning on. So that's another hesitancy I have about it.
Further discussion?
What's the percentage of that the SAVE dollars is covering with those laptops? Because I know it's not the full person. I know it's not all of them. Or is it?
I can speak to that. So the SAVE dollars cover basically all of our technology expenses combined, including the laptops for one-to-one and classroom technology, infrastructure, and everything else. The one-to-one program, and I can provide you a breakdown of this. There's one that I posted to my blog about a few weeks ago. But the one-to-one program will not cost us more than our status quo deployment. And the biggest reason for that is our one-to-one devices are $193. It's actually dropped now to $191 per device. Our current status quo deployment of Windows devices is about $800 to $1,000 per device. With one-to-one, with virtual applications, we offset a number of labs within our secondary buildings. So the cumulative cost, including all software licensing, all of the laptops, so on, is really, over a 6-year period, it's about $120,000 less than what we're currently spending on our status quo technology deployment. So one-to-one is not purely an addition to what we're currently deploying. It'll allow us to pull about 24 labs out of our building that are currently equipped with Windows desktop computers. It allows us to pull a couple dozen mobile laptop carts, things like that. So it's not a situation where we're adding a huge cost without cutting back on expenses in other areas.
It should be noted that there's a bit of a change in how we're approaching this purchase this year, and that because of the rather large deployment that Adam has just talked about, we're actually going to engage in a short-term lease, like so many districts do for this disposable type of equipment. And so that will come back to you at a later date for your action. But that's a piece that will be a little bit different than just buying them all outright and setting them on the shelf.
How does that work? How short a term is that?
That's a 4-year term, which matches the 4-year lifespan of the devices. The 4-year lease that Craig mentions would actually be for devices that are not one-to-one devices, primarily for staff devices and other devices that we're deploying in buildings. It would match the 4-year lifespan. So when the lease expires, that would be the end of our lifespan for the equipment.
What does it mean to lease something that by the time you're done leasing it, it's going to be not functional anymore? How's that different from buying it?
The difference is really that this is an agenda item that'll come to you at a later date in April, most likely. But the biggest difference is it allows us to standardize equipment. Without getting into too much detail, currently we support 18 different models of device for staff members alone. Because we've been on a 6-year replacement cycle, we buy about 3 devices a year. So we have 18 different devices that our techs support, that we have to stock parts for, that we have to provide service for. By leasing, will allow us to bring those devices onto a single generation. And that'll be a single generation that will last for those 4 years. So the lease allows us to pay for that. Really, we're buying a computer allocation for those deployment groups, again, primarily staff in this case, all at once. And then leasing spreads the cost over the 4-year lifespan of those devices.
Absolutely. I mean, it's cash flow management, right? And if you bought them, you'd get on this 4-year cycle and you'd have all these generations of equipment versus not. So this is where you lease cash flow management, and you can manage the technology all at once, right?
It really provides a lot of budget consistency over that time. Right?
Now, I can't wait to approve one-to-one, because I think it's going to impact the kids that have the greatest barrier to having the technology. So bring it on. Let's go. We're behind, if anything, on this one. So I haven't seen this deployed across Iowa in many districts. I can't wait to get it done, so I look forward to it. Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Yes. I was going to tell you up front, but I'll just do it from now on.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries, with directors Deloach, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and directors Liebig, Hemingway, and Rotland voting nay.
All right, next item on the agenda is Computer Solutions Purchase Agreement. Adam? Craig or Steve, you going to take that one? Or?
I was just going to tell you, these next 4 come together. So.
Yep, the next 4 all kind of come together. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. These are all continuations of projects that I've updated you on before at my mid-year technology update, and then also with the last purchases. 2 of them, the Computer Solutions and AirCore purchases, are for networking equipment. That's primarily for the new buildings for Liberty and the new Hoover. The Computer Solutions agreement is purely for those, and that's for the network infrastructure that'll go into those buildings, basic infrastructure, switches and stacking cables and power supplies, battery backups. The AirCore purchase agreement is for the wireless networking components. The one difference is, rather than just being for the 2 new buildings, that also includes what were already planned upgrades at the other high schools. These were planned before I arrived in the district. City was already underway, so this is just the wireless component of that project. And West was already scheduled for this summer, as was Tate. So those are both the wireless components of that, and it brings it up to current generation wireless technology. There's some detail in the attachments, but happy to answer questions about that. The Berg AV purchase and the Midwest Computer Products purchase are part of the classroom suite upgrade that I mentioned. Again, the majority, I believe it's 147 classrooms that are affected. The majority of those are in Liberty and New Hoover, but it also includes classroom upgrades for technology at Twain and Hills and Transitions. So those buildings would be affected as well. That brings up all of those classrooms to the current standard suite, which we'll begin to deploy in all of the buildings, starting with these next year and then moving through the other buildings over the next 4 years. And in each case, we went through a full RFP. One quick note, like I said, I don't want to take a ton of your time beyond any questions that you have. One quick note, huge thanks to Justin Miller, who's sitting behind me, and David Morris, Network Administrator, for working through the E-rate process, which is a big demand. It means a full RFP, 30-day process, but that'll result in the district getting a rebate on the computer solutions purchase of about $138,000, or 60% of the project cost, and on the Air Corps purchase of about $136,000, again, 60% of the project cost through a federal E-rate program. So that saves us a lot of money and means that our investment's much less than it would have been. Again, lots of detail in the attachments, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Entertain a motion to approve the computer solutions purchase
I just got
agreement.
one question.
Or we can get a motion on the table, right?
Oh, sure.
I move that we approve the computer solutions purchase agreement.
Is there a second?
Are we doing them all together or just this one?
I think we're going,
They're
does
listed.
it matter? I was just going to do 4, but,
I was say they're listed separately. I'd take them separately.
right.
You can lump them or you can do them separately, or really.
All right, discussion?
Go ahead.
And this is, we're discussing all of them, right?
Sure, I mean, that's the way they were presented.
Right.
Go for
Okay.
it.
On the one having to do with the technology upgrades and projectors and whiteboards at Liberty and New Hoover, are we getting away from smart boards and going a different direction? Yeah.
Yep, and so that matches what I had provided information at during my technology update earlier. So it is a move towards interactive projectors, which contain all the functionality of the smart boards. They still use smart notebook software, so there's no additional software functionality change for teachers, and no need for additional PD in that regard. The big motivation there for moving is cost. So
Right.
the combined cost for smartboard and a non-interactive projector is about $3,500, and our cost for the interactive projector plus a regular whiteboard is about $1,700 per classroom.
Right, so as opposed to with our poster coming in when we had our technology in the classroom movement, and the push was to get a smart board in every room, as opposed to what the technology cost was then to what we're doing now in these new buildings, what type of a difference are we looking at, or a savings? Yeah, can you
Yep, so
ballpark that
it's,
at all?
in terms of the classroom technology, it's a pretty substantial savings. There are a couple of components. Within the Berg AV purchase, one of the components is a classroom audio solution that also includes a wireless pendant mic for voice amplification purposes. That's an additional, that's not something that we did as part of the Every Classroom campaign. And then one that's not part of these purchase agreements, but it'll be a much lower dollar amount purchase, is wireless video as a solution. It's not part of these because none of the vendors proposed something that matched our specs in the RFP. So we'll bring that later. But we'll be adding a wireless video component which untethers the teacher from the front of the classroom. They can be anywhere and still using the projector and the interactive functionality. But all told, I think our total decrease, so prior to this project, between the smartboard, the non-interactive projector, and the document camera is still included as part of that Berg AV purchase. Between those three items, we're typically talking about $4,100 per classroom for equipment. Under this new plan, it works out to about, just doing the math in my head, $2,700 per classroom. So it's about a $1,400 decrease.
And with the smart boards that are in existing classrooms, when those projectors go, we're not repairing the projectors, they're getting phased obsolescent out.
That is correct. One of the things that we will do, I mentioned that we do have 3 buildings really, Twain, Hills, and Transitions. where we'll be upgrading the classrooms. That means that we will be pulling out existing equipment, some of which hasn't reached, its end life cycle. We'll actually be holding on to that equipment to use as spares. So if we have a projector that dies or whatever the case may be, we don't necessarily have to rush out and buy anything. If we did buy something, it would be part of the new standard, but that'll allow us to use those devices to take the place of failed equipment, and hopefully get through this transition period without buying any equipment beyond what we plan to.
I don't have a question, but just a quick comment. Just knowing, most everyone knows my wife teaches at Twain, and I know that you and Steve, I think, went and presented to the staff on what's the transition is with the new equipment, and it's my understanding that the teachers there were very excited about it. In fact, some of the comments that my wife relayed to me was that they were surprised that they were getting things instead of having things taken away. So they were very grateful for that and excited for what they were getting. And I'm sure the Shimmick teachers are back there thinking, when are we going to get this stuff too? But so I'm going to be voting yes for this because I know the teachers are excited about it, and I think it's a good thing.
So Adam, I don't want you to take it personally. I won't keep saying it over, but probably I'll vote no because, I look at this, just four items on one agenda, and we got almost $1 million to save. And, if I was here 6 months from now and I saw that we were swimming in cash because the bond passed, I probably wouldn't think twice about these. But I do kind of feel like, boy, that's $1 million, not even more than $1 million if we count the laptops that we might wish we had for some building projects if we get delayed because of the bond. So same reason I voted against that restroom project last time around.
So Adam, what happens if this fails?
Sure. We'd be scrambling a little bit. We do need to equip
The short, concise.
Yep.
Like
We
this
need
won't
to
happen.
we need to equip the new buildings with classroom technologies, and that is the vast majority of the equipment in this purchase.
No technology at Liberty or Alexander, is that what you're saying?
Correct. I mean, at a fundamental level, this is the network at those two buildings and all of the classroom technology.
So we will create an inequity for our students.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'm persuaded. I do kind of feel the same way as I felt earlier, though, that I don't understand, and maybe this is fine, but I don't understand sometimes or I disagree at least with whatever thought went into prioritizing what was going to get paid for with existing dollars versus what was going to get put into the dollars we don't know if we have. So that's part of what's making me at least think about it.
I'm just trying to help you clarify what we're voting for.
I appreciate it.
Do you want to withdraw the motion and create one for 4, or do you want to just?
Since we're taking them as 4 and discussing them as 4, I'm happy to withdraw the motion.
You okay with that, Paul? Second. Entertain a
What's
new
going on?
motion.
He's going to withdraw the single motion.
And do all 4, okay.
Entertain a new motion.
I'll give it a shot. I move that we approve, let's just say it this way.
Operational items 6 to 9.
Operational items B6, 7, 8, and 9 as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote? I'm going to vote yes.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Next item on the agenda is Appendix 9, Dwayne.
Thank you. We have 5 projects with 5 requests. The first one is for the Liberty High School softball practice field at Van Allen. You may recall that back in September of 2016, we rejected the bids because they were nearly $400,000. We just felt that was too excessive. So we went back and redid the project, reduced the scope, rebid it. We had 5 bidders this time, and we're recommending that we award the contract to Iowa Athletic Field Construction in the amount of $200,927. That would include 2 alternates on the project. At Hoover East, we actually have a negative change request for $9,117. We made some changes in the hardware after talking to the contractor, and we also added some hardware on the trash enclosure. At Liberty High School, the kitchen equipment, which is a separate contract, we have a change request for $4,795. And we changed the pass-through opening in the kitchen and had to do some field welding on stainless steel. It's an expensive proposition. And then added some stainless steel base. And at West High School, we have a plumbing life cycle project. You may recall the last 2 years, we've done first and second floor plumbing remodels there. This is the third floor, which would complete that stack. And we received 2 bids. We're recommending an award to Rocon Construction of Iowa City for $176,420. And then the roof management, you may recall, we approved a package either at the last meeting or the meeting before. This is a bid package 2, and it's for the press boxes and softball, football press boxes at West High School. It also includes some window replacement and some rotten wood and things like that, a roof structure that we're going to work on. We got 3 bids. Recommend that Tricon Construction of Cedar Rapids be awarded the contract for $253,000. The combination of the 2 packages, 1 and 2, is less than $700,000, which is our budget for this year. So I would recommend approval and answer any questions you might have.
I have a question that's not related to the projects in regards to the changes. Just in general, the softball field you're putting in North Liberty, did the district consider approaching the city of North Liberty and asking them if they would want to go in on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, Scott Kibbe spent a considerable amount of time visiting with North Liberty Rec and also Coralville Rec. And Coralville's going to allow the softball team to use their field for competition or actual games, but neither.
Across the street from there? Or
Yeah, it's south
further
of
down?
North Central
Sure.
there, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, it's quite a pretty
Complex.
extensive area there, yeah. So they're going to do that. North Liberty is going to let the baseball team use the field up at North Penn, up there in that Penn Meadows Park, but we still lack an appropriate softball practice facility, so we thought this was the best place to put it.
And the city didn't want to, since they're going to be using it after Liberty gets their fields, it says here that it would be available for community use.
Sure, it'll just become part of the playground. Right now, North Liberty Youth Baseball uses one of the fields at Van Allen and at Penn. This would just be another one that would become available. Does that answer your question?
I was just wondering if if you consider asking them to help pay for it.
Oh.
Since their community, I'm guessing their community rec will use it.
Yeah, well, the North Liberty Youth Baseball isn't really into softball. They'd probably use it for practice, but I doubt if they'd contribute to a softball field.
Thanks.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Appendix 9 items as presented.
Second.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to make a shout out to the stainless steel welders.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm pressing the yes button.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, agenda setting. We've got 3 items on here. April 4th is a joint work session with.
Chris, you've got some items withdrawn from the consent agenda?
Right.
Well,
Round.
no,
You're
I'm
right.
following the agenda.
He is.
Oh.
I noticed that too.
Sorry, my computer's dying on me, so I've been.
It's a little different than normal, but I'm just following the process, so. Consent will come yet, so we'll try to make this quick for people who are waiting for that. April 4th, we have a joint work session with the City of Iowa City, specifically the Iowa City Council. We'll be talking the Facilities Master Plan and GO Bond. And that'll be here, just so we know. So it's here at 5 o'clock, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is here?
Yes. Got the 11th draft agenda.
So we have some items from policy and governance that we need brought to the board for consideration.
They're on the
Is it
draft
there
now.
now?
Yep, there's 4 items that were added to the draft.
Okay, good. It wasn't on there last I checked, I'm sorry.
Would we have space to have a discussion about special ed?
You ready? When's the next special ed update?
I turn to Jane in terms of timing.
What are you looking for with the
Status, we have a new, in our personnel action, we have a new special ed director. It'd be a chance to introduce her to the board and the community and, have a chance to talk with her and see the direction she looks to take us, that type of thing.
I mean, if she's available, great. If not, I mean, just a status update, right? If she's available, great, but if she's not, then,
Correct.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be difficult for her to talk about the direction if she doesn't start till July?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If she's available, great, but if she's
I mean,
not.
I'm just saying, even if she comes, she can't really say anything more than, hey, how you doing? I'm just saying, I don't want us to have these expectations that she's gonna break down how we're gonna change up special education. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to be realistic for the community that she doesn't
Well,
start
I'm
till
not
July 1.
trying to be unrealistic, but I'm just saying that it'd be an opportunity to, she's obviously has a proven track record somewhere else. It's a chance to talk and see what she's done other places and her ideas of the direction going forward, understanding that she hasn't been on the job. But there's other issues in special ed we can discuss.
Jane, could you remind me, the seclusion room task force, when is that to be at a point of making recommendations?
That'll be something we were going to talk about tonight at the work session. We have a meeting. I'm sorry.
And I know it's on the agenda, it says it's an update.
Right, and that was, we met last night again, and one of the requests that we have is if we can ask for a final recommendation and report back to the board to be more in June. We've got a lot of information that we're digging through. We just received a copy of the Hanover research on Friday, and so the committee was actually able to get a copy of that last night and review that for the first time. We have several members that have access to a lot of information that they continue to share through what we call a virtual parking lot. So the group's been very good and diligent about digging through the information and the research as it comes in. So we're hoping we can provide updates as the board would like, but we really would like to wait until June for a final recommendation so that it's thorough.
A board meeting agenda.
Yes, yes.
Switching gears, the chamber asked Steve and I to do an update on education. I'd like to add that to the teaching and learning. Quick update, we just put the materials in, I think, and wouldn't take a lot of time.
Sorry, and no rush, but I know at the last meeting, and I just want to continue kind of coming back to it, I'd like to get kind of an update on transitions, service center, the changes going on there.
We put that on.
Did we put it on?
It's a parking lot item. Where is it?
I'd have to go back and look. My computer's dead, so I can't see that right now.
I just think between the physical space changes, the change in leadership upcoming at transitions, and
Yeah, we said before the end of school, but we'll check that.
between now and
timing,
May, that's all.
Yeah.
Just keep coming up with it.
We'll check that, make sure we got it.
You can get that on a draft.
Something that was of interest, if we can come back and talk about how thought exchange is going. I think it'd be nice to get an update on that. And then I would really be interested in having some further discussion at the board table about preschool, being that there has been some different exchanges and viewpoints about who we serve in our preschools. And so we'll be really interested in having that discussion at the board table.
So the preschool, is it okay if we do thought exchange at work session?
I'm just no rush on it. I'm just saying these are things that I'm interested in. Those kind of things.
No, I think pre-K, we can talk where that fits. Okay, going forward, work session, April 4th. So we will, not April 4th, but in May, we'll put the transportation on there, coming back with the topic for tonight. And then looking forward, I'd also like to, I know the Education Committee won't show up till next agenda setting, but there was a request to review the ethnic studies by Students Against Hate and Discrimination. So I think we'll pencil that in and review that next meeting. I think there's 3 topics on that Education Committee agenda right now, so that would work fine. Further agenda setting? All right. Items withdrawn from consent, starting from the top.
Yes, item 6.
Item 6.
On this one, since and it has to do with the two students from Tipton wanting to open enroll into Liberty. Since we've closed it off to people in the district to go into Liberty, I think we're kind of violating our own rules here by opening it up to somebody outside of the district going into Liberty.
Well, to clarify, I think we closed grade 9.
Grade 9 from West High.
But those two are grade 9 people, right? So, I mean, the same theory would apply, that by the time they're 12th graders, that building's
Looking at the wrong
going to
one?
be significantly over what we say is its capacity.
Aren't they 12th and 11th grade?
Oh, I see
No,
what you're
it's
saying, they're
the one's
further down.
the ones from Tipton.
They're on
Yeah, I
the-
think the rule we were trying to reason those on and why we presented them to you was open enrollment was opened on August 23rd of 16, and then the board took action to close voluntary transfers December 13th. So we're closed to voluntary transfers in the district for freshmen to Liberty, but we're still open to open enrollment. So if you have different guidance on that, we'd be happy to execute that, but that's why we presented them that way.
We'd have to allow open enrollment if we have some capacity somewhere at a high school, right? But
That's
We
correct.
get to control which high school they would be
That's also correct.
potentially allowed to go. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say same rule should apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have no objection if it was City or West. But since we've said no to people in our own district paying our own taxes, I have a concern with this one.
I'm going to say what I said then. I think the board needs to be a lot more proactive on its guidance going forward. So, again, this would be another reactive move in my book. If we want to close Liberty, we should just close it, or just close it to grade 9, or, should come back and make that an agenda item.
I think you've also previously approved some other students for open enrollment into Liberty, same grade on prior agendas, so that would be another consideration as you're thinking through that we've already approved some for next year is my belief. I don't have those pulled up in front of me, but I think we've had some other open enrollment requests into the district that have been approved.
Yeah, and respectfully, I checked all of those, and we haven't done any.
Okay, you didn't find any? Okay.
No ninth graders.
I asked
Again,
Lisa real
other-
quick before the end of the day, and I
10 through
thought we
12
had some other.
graders. Yes,
Okay, but no
ninth
freshmen?
graders.
Okay.
Well, I'd make a motion that we deny these two Tipton students access to Liberty, but allow them to open enroll at either City or West as their preference.
And approve the rest of this? And also approve the rest of what's in here?
Right.
You just need to say it, yeah. And approve the remainder.
Let's add that.
Or how about, may I suggest?
May I suggest, okay. go ahead.
Approval of this item excluding.
Yes, correct. Approval of this item excluding the two students from Tipton wishing to enroll at Liberty.
Okay, but that would be with the understanding that they would still be entitled to enroll at
Exactly.
West,
That
for
would-
example.
that they would be allowed to open enroll at either City or West at their choosing.
I'll second that.
Further discussion?
So what happens to these students now? Have they already registered or anything?
I'm not sure if we would have their registration information yet. We would go back to them and inform them that Liberty High would not be an option for them, and then ask if they would still like to proceed with their registration at City or West High. Most likely, they were specific on their school request, so that may not be an option for them, but if it is, then we would proceed with granting them approval to enroll in City or West.
Since we have a motion and a second, I would just say that this sets a very dangerous precedent, going through piecemeal, one line at a time, picking students here or there. I understand the reason for the motion and the second. I actually don't think, I personally, if I could go back to December, I have a problem with, that decision, but that's the decision made, so I would support that decision regarding voluntary transfers, but I think that piecemeal picking open enrollment in, or whatever, one student at a time or two students at a time is a dangerous precedent to set going forward.
So I have a question, Matt. So what happens after this? So say the board approves that we don't allow these children to go to Liberty High. What's the rule now for you all? What's the guidance that you all understand from this?
There is no guidance.
Right, I think there would be action on this item, but we would still be lacking guidance on what to do with future requests for Liberty High School. So the board would probably want to clear up their guidance on that as far as, are we considering other and open enrollees, or are we just considering them to City and West? And then we would handle all those considerations after that accordingly.
I suggested that in December. I mean, and I voted against it, so I haven't brought it up. I'm not going to drive close in Liberty because I don't believe in it. But for those that do, we really should proactively close that grade level for everyone.
So do we need board action on that? I guess that's my question.
Yes,
I mean, like
absolutely.
after this, do we need to have like?
Yes.
Okay. For ninth graders?
Well, again, for whatever the board chooses they want to do.
Okay.
We're hemorrhaging out, what, $2.3 million a year in open enrollment at this point? And that's been because we've had space limitations. We haven't been able to bring people in, and we have space now. I really want to see that trend turn around.
Right,
Definitely want to see that.
just to tag on to what you're saying, I guess, I most likely will vote the same way I voted in December on this issue. And we do have space in the district. It's just not, it's not going to be at Liberty High. If they want to go to Western City, that would be fine.
Let's just vote. Again, my only comment was we should do this proactively moving forward instead of one at a time. So let's bring it back. All right, we had any further
The
discussion?
policy thing that we need to take to policy and governance, or is this something just board action?
It's not really it's board action. So we should provide, so I'll just tell you in the past, for example, it just took board action to close voluntary transfer and open enrollment to City and West. And that provides the guidance that's required in terms of how to handle these things. Okay. So had that guidance been provided, these would have showed up as declines, right? Because they would have applied, you follow the process, we've provided guidance, administrative recommendation would have been decline. So it's not necessarily a policy issue, but it is a board action required because we need to provide that guidance. All right, enough discussion. Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I voted no. I was going to see if my no button worked. Apparently not. It's consistent.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Hemingway, Rotland, and Ressler voting yea, and Kersling and Lynch voting nay.
All right, number 12.
Yes, 12 is the, excuse me, I have to scroll back up. It's the Shimmick Playground. We had a lot of people talking in the community comments about it. I did attend, I believe it was the March 8th meeting, as well as Brian did, and have received a very good letter from a parent at Shimmick on the timeline and how things went through, and I am not in any way saying that the structure doesn't need to be replaced. It does need to be replaced, but I think the way that we're going about it is a quick fix for a 20-year solution, and I believe that if we were to come up with a temporary 1-year alternative, and then after the 10-plex is gone and the primary location is available, I think that that's a ultimately better 20-year solution to the problem than this quick rush. I also have personal concerns with putting it at the back of the building, as I expressed at that meeting that way, but on this one I've got real concerns, and I would make a motion to
Well, you don't really need to make a motion to
Okay,
decline.
I move that we,
The
that
question-
I make a move that we deny this and look for an alternative.
Are you making a motion, or I'd suggest, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir, please.
If there's anybody who wants to make a motion to approve it, we should do that, and if it fails, it fails, we're done. It's the same vote.
I move that we approve the item that's been pulled from the consent agenda regarding the Shimmick playground equipment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I
you
do
don't
have
get to- I'm
a,
sorry, you go
I do have a discussion. Patty Fields was up here for 10 years, and Patty and I didn't always agree on a lot of things, but one thing that we did agree on was always respecting process and the work of committees, and taking the group greater good over individual concerns. Patty always taught me to respect the process, and I was at that March 8th meeting, along with Director Hemingway as well. And there's a point after 15 months of discussion, analysis, going to the kids, talking about ADA accessibility, location, changes in location when the decision was made to bring the transition schoolhouse there. There were shifts in 15 months. It wasn't a static situation, but I respect the work of the committee. I respect the work of the individuals who put together almost a year and a quarter of time into this. I know the kids are excited based on their vote, their concerns, and their selections of playground equipment. Some of them, are very excited about the visits that they got to make to other schools and what the future holds for Shimmick. Another concern that I always have is analysis paralysis. There's a time to make a move and a time to move ahead. And to not move ahead at this point means that we lose a whole nother construction season on getting the job done, and a whole nother year with a rapidly degrading wooden play structure that my kids have had the privilege of personally playing on for over 9 years. But quite frankly, the treatments of the wood that's used for that play structure would likely not be considered safe by today's standards. I hate to discuss what type of chemicals they used to treat wood back when that was done, but it is definitely not safe, and the wood structure itself is not safe. I have a real concern about that and about delaying one more year. This is not the first time the district has done equipment that is ADA accessible. We act like this is the only school that requires ADA accessibility. The quote from Voltaire, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." This is good work done by the committee, and you can poke holes and so on and so forth. But 16 people out of 23 voted in favor of Plan B. I recommend that we support the decision of the committee and the hard work that they put in.
I have a little bit of a disagreement just on that one thing, but really a different comment. I do disagree with that. Brian and I just have a disagreement about the process issue. I mean, I feel like we shouldn't approve something just because it was approved by a committee, but we were elected to use independent judgment on those things. But really, the reason I'm going to vote no on this is because we got a bunch of arguments that I didn't, didn't come to me at least until last night and this morning, and I just haven't had time to assimilate them and evaluate them. And I would vote no just to put it off for 2 more weeks until I had time to really take a look at the arguments that people are making.
And I just want to make one comment on the process, and I appreciate where Brian's coming from on it. And I'm not, and the only analogy I'll make is that, and similar to what Chris said, was that we may have a isolation box committee come back and say that they approved the use of isolation box. And I'm going to vote no against it because I think it's wrong. And in this situation, I appreciate what the committee did. I understand they put a lot of work into it and everything, but I still think there is a better long-term solution to this. I understand with the timber structures, the splinters and all of that. My daughter went through it at Hoover before they replaced theirs. So I understand, I'm not saying that the structure remains. The structure has to be replaced, it has to be addressed. But I don't think we rush into a 20-year-long decision and put it in a location, as I will state again, I think it's in the wrong location. And just because it's being driven by the rush of the facilities master plan and the 10-plex.
Well, that's the key, is that you think it's in the wrong location. I'm not trying to jump on you, Phil, but the Shimmick community doesn't feel it's in the wrong location. The teachers, the parents, the students don't feel it's in the wrong location.
You know, I do, whenever, I really do appreciate it when teachers come to the microphone, and I don't question at all what they're telling me. I assume they're telling me exactly what they think, but part of me always does wonder, gee, if there were a teacher who disagreed, would they feel as comfortable coming to the microphone? When, you know, their immediate supervisor is probably, you know, in favor of the thing. So I wish I felt more confident that people would. And so part of me just always has that nagging doubt, and I just don't know.
That's a question. So can you talk about what the ADA pieces are and are not? And then the other piece of it is, I'm really struggling with the conversation because on one end, and seclusion spaces are talking about safety, and then we're talking about safety, but then this safety is not this safe. I want our kids to be safe regardless, and maybe I'm just too simple in thinking that I want all of our kids safe regardless. And so I want to understand the ADA piece to it, because that's significant, important, because the way that it's being, and this is why, the good thing about being on committees is there's a public perception about what the truth is. And then there's another thing when you're sitting there and you're reading that material, you're having those discussions with people. So people can say what they want to say, but when you're there, you know that it's something uniquely different. And so everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That doesn't make it true. And so help me understand, is the playground just completely not ADA compliant at all? Or is it just certain things about the playground structure? There are a couple pieces that kids that may have some different disabilities are unable to utilize it. Or is it just the entire thing is just, if you're a kid with a disability, don't come and play on the playground in Shimmick? Because sometimes that's the way that it's being presented. And I'm just really trying to, and I would hope that our district wouldn't be like, oh, you all can't play here. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that they have some of those issues now with the current structure, so.
Well, I can give you my perspective. And one, I think you're asking me about the new playground as opposed to the old. Even the old playground has one or two components that might be considered ADA accessible, okay? But it's beyond unsafe. It needs to come down. Having said that, the new playground, there is a very distinct, I'll come back to your ADA question, but there's a part of this that we need to understand. The playground at the proposed location is at a level plane with the building. It's level access. It's easy to get to. Where the existing playground is at a lower elevation from the school, and to make it ADA compliant in that location would require some switchbacks and some ramps, some platforms, just to get to the playground because it's lower than the school itself. So in that regard, the access to the new playground where proposed is much safer and much more accessible, and we think manageable for school personnel to observe the playground during play hours, because they'll be able to see every part of the school or the playground from just behind the school. The other part of that is that our playground policy requires that we make some of our equipment ADA accessible. There's minimum requirements. I've asked this question no less than 5 times in the last week, and I get the same answer every time, is that we are exceeding the minimum standards as put forth by ADA for that playground. And we are exceeding our own standards in our policy. So we have added some equipment. There was one piece of equipment that was a ramp between 2 sections that got shortened to facilitate a different piece of equipment. That change was made. It was made after a lot of discussion at the committee level. They, I think, made the right choice. They're not precluding any ADA accessibility to this playground. It'll still be accessible. There'll still be some elements that are, but you have to take the big picture. We have 200 and some students at Shimmick, and this has to work for all of them. And so it's a compromise. And I think the committee struggled with that, frankly. but they came up with the right solution in the end. Other comments about the location are, we're gonna remove a few what we call scrub trees. We're actually gonna keep a couple large oak mature trees, which has been misstated. There was some references to stumps. Well, those are playground stumps. They're not real tree stumps that are in that playground. They're actually designed pieces to be in that. So there are some pieces to this that I think have been misrepresented. But I feel sincerely that this is a good, solid, safe, ADA accessible playground, and the committee made the right choice.
Well, for me, I only had one question, and that's what was the PTO recommendation? I understand that was to endorse this scenario, so I'm going to vote yes, because I'm going to vote with the PTO. So, further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Push the yes button.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Liebig, Hemingway, and Rotland voting nay.
All right, 14.
14. 14 is cargo, high roof cargo van. My main reason for pulling this one and discussing, again, we're purchasing a vehicle from Stiver, Ford, and Waukee. I wanted to also make it known that all of the local new car dealerships contributed to a student trip to the Chicago Car Show. The Deary Brothers, which was the higher bid, also contributed $1,000 to the foundation before writing a $500 check to the district for our students to go and experience the Chicago Car Show. And I would like at some point in time for us to have a discussion on the possibilities of a local preference policy with the district to recognize that the businesses that are local, that pay the taxes of the bonds and the debt that we're going to impose on them should be given consideration for their contributions other than their taxes to the district.
So
And
Phil,
with
I'm
that,
just-
I will move that this be approved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion?
Just one quick comment, I guess. Not to pick on you, Phil, but because the local companies contributed dollars to the school district to give them preference, I guess, coming from my business side, we donate a lot of dollars to this district, and I've never once asked for any of the athletic equipment or apparel or purchases to come back to us. If we were asked to bid and we were higher than the other one, I wouldn't expect us to get it. It's just not how I work. I mean, we donate the dollars.
No, I understand, and you don't sell any apparel to anybody that goes to Wester City or Liberty.
We do not anymore, you're right.
And Phil, and you already know this, we talked this about a year ago.
Well-
But I'm certainly willing to entertain proposals. But I think the conclusion we came to a year ago is you're always solid taking the low cost.
Well-
And everybody knows the rules of the game. And now, if you have a proposal, I'd love to hear it.
Well,
It's just hard to figure out.
The county has something in effect that I think we can discuss with them and see what other entities are doing.
Just needs to be a policy we can actually execute.
I understand.
Yep. Further discussion?
I just know that I think you guys talked this in operations once. I know that we talked it once at a work session as far as selection of contracts. This is probably about 2 years ago when it comes to projects around the district as far as local, there's a rubric that you guys use, if I remember correctly, Dwayne, and correct me if I'm wrong, it has a matrix that, how close are they to the district, so on and so forth. And probably not in this instance, but I'm just curious if what Director Hemingway is suggesting is if that's applied here or not. I'm just curious. Meeting wasn't that long.
The answer's
I didn't talk that long, but that one. I'll just answer. I think what you're referring to is the rubric that we created for selecting design firms.
Right, for,
And not for selecting contractors. We pretty much adhere to the Iowa competitive bid law for contractors.
okay,
So, and that's pretty much written in stone, and,
Yep.
But for design firms, we do have some flexibility, we did build that into our rubric for that. I think that's,
we don't have that flexibility with this type.
in my
we have-
opinion, no, I feel obliged to fulfill and follow that Iowa competitive bid law, so
Okay.
when it comes to vendors and purchases like this, I think you're gonna have to maybe get an opinion from legal counsel and whether or not we could even do that, to have a vendor preference for locality.
We have purchased more expensive items, forklift, for example, from a vendor that came in with a higher bid.
All right, further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I voted yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Hemingway, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Rutland voting nay.
All right, just a reminder, we will have our work session at the back of the room here immediately following this meeting, and given the time, we'll make that a relatively quick transition. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.